So we've covered why you're here today. I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm here today and how I've come to be in this place. So just quick poll. How many of you have a degree in like computer science or physics or AI or anything like that? All right, 1, 2. All right, so what's your degree in?
Physics.
Physics? Woo, boy, I'm in trouble. Computer science. All right. So some of this for you all, you may look at it and go, well, duh, that's just common sense. Of course, that's how AI works, of course. But for most people, they're not going to have that. So if I say something that you want to take issue with me, and you can maybe help me explain a little bit better. One of the first surprises for me was physics. One of the guys I work with the most has a PhD from Purdue University in physics, and he's one of the leading AI people that I know anywhere in the world. And he flies all over the world, does conferences, judged the Stanford University AI hackathon last year. And I was thinking, physics? Why is physics? And you're not allowed to answer, but why do you think physics would be something that AI relies upon? Or why would that be a degree that some people have?
The amount of computing power, quantum computing, and things like that are required.
Computing power, but I'll tell you, like, the surprise for me, and this was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I was at an AI conference, and I realized quickly that I'm the dumbest person in the room. Like, everybody else was very intelligent, and all of them had like physics or data science or advanced mathematics degrees. But I'm going to let you in a little secret. AI is just math. It is super complicated math. I like to say that when I was in high school taking Calculus 2, I remember telling Miss Bradbury, why in the world do we have to learn this? Nobody is going to use. I'm never going to use Calculus 2 in the real world. Well, some people did. And they created some really incredible stuff. And so math is the foundation of everything that we're doing in AI. All AI does, if I'm going to oversimplify it, but just to kind of help you understand how it's working, it is predicting what should come next. And it does an incredible job at predicting what should come next. And I've oversimplified it, but I do think it helps us kind of get in the right framework. And I'm going to go deeper into this, but like AI isn't thinking. AI doesn't have feelings. AI is not sentient. It's not trying to convert you to do something. It is just doing what it's programmed to do at the very heart of what it doesn't have a heart. But AI is just predicting really well what should come next and follows the programming that people who gave it. Does that pass my computer science and physics people? Okay, good. All right. That's as technical as we're going to get today. So if you're worried that like we're going to geek out, we can over lunch if you want, but we're not going to do that. By the way, my undergrad degree, accounting, master's of divinity, and a PhD in church history and theology and intercultural studies. So nothing to do with AI, nothing to do with this type of things we're talking about today. So there's hope that you don't have to be a PhD in physics to be able to do what we're going to do today. All right. So before we get started on the nitty-gritty of AI, I want to put it in perspective of where AI sits at the International Mission Board. Frequently, I'll have people say, why in the world is a mission board using AI? How in the world would you use AI? Or I'll discuss, well, my job title is Director of Innovation and Artificial Intelligence. And the very first time I told somebody that, they're like, I don't think of mission boards as innovative. I don't even think of church as innovative. I mean, they were pretty blunt. This was a young guy who was pretty blunt with me and said, I actually think of like churches as kind of old and stodgy and kind of out of touch with what we're doing. So it's really surprising. He wasn't being critical. He was just being totally honest. It's kind of surprising that you all have a team that looks at innovation. So I explained to him that most big inventions throughout history have had a very strong tie to the church. From the printing press to Morse code to FM radio to AM radio to satellite TV. CBN had satellites before TBN, before the Turner Broadcasting Network, Christian Broadcasting Network was out. So the church has traditionally been extremely innovative. And so it's not surprising that we're trying to be part of the innovation. I'll also say that to be not part of innovation is to the detriment of the church. And to not be speaking into things like artificial intelligence leaves people who do not share our worldview to be the ones shaping what artificial intelligence will be in the future. So I think it is very important for us to not bury our heads in the sand and throw up the woe is me, but to actually engage in shaping what the future looks like. So that's what our team at the IMB does. In our innovation team, it's a small team. Most of the people on my team are overseas. They serve as missionaries living in different parts of the world, and they work with others as we think about the future. I used to describe innovation as like thinking out 5-10 years into the future and trying to kind of think about the possibilities. And so we should be building out solutions that be related to that. I now say maybe 6 to 18 months out into the future because things are rapidly changing right now. So there are some things on the horizon that are really far out, but the horizon's getting much, much quicker, much shorter. 4 areas, so you can understand where we fit. There's 4 areas that my team works with traditionally, or for the most part. One is digital engagement. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but digital engagement is taking the gospel to where people spend a lot of their time. Where do people get information that shapes who they are and what they believe? What are some ideas?
Social media.
Yeah. If you've read my book, which you won't read, another book you won't read, you don't have to read the book. Like this right here is where people are getting so much influence. If you're working with Gen Alphas or Gen Zs, this right here has insane influence on where they get information. So as we're working to take the gospel all around the world, we can't sometimes get into we can't cross physical barriers, but we can go right through those barriers using technology, using phones. And we're doing a lot in the area of digital engagement. I'll talk a little bit about that. Digital communities. So this is going to sound bizarre to some of you. It sounded bizarre to me the first time I heard it. But Gen Z, and I'm not being prescriptive, I'm being descriptive of what's happening. Gen Z, over 60% of Gen Z think that it is just as legitimate to have a relationship with someone all around on the other side of the world that you've never met than it is to have a relationship with your next door neighbor. And they have deep, deep relationships with people that they meet online all around the world. And as I was reflecting upon this, my best friend is in Birmingham, Alabama, and in Memphis, two guys that I really spend a lot of time with, Memphis and Birmingham. I live in Virginia. We talk every single day through chat. We text back and forth. But physically, I saw Brady yesterday for the first time in a long time as I came to town. And Jim in Memphis, I've not seen in over a year. But I would consider him much closer of a friend than the person living next door to me. So as we're thinking about digital community, that's another part of what my team is building out, how we build community that is digital. Before you get all upset, and I hope I do make you uncomfortable, part of my job is to make people uncomfortable. I don't want to make you so uncomfortable that you think I'm heretical, but I do want you to I want to challenge the status quo. That's what innovation does. So I want us to think about how do we reach people that we don't have physical contact with. So part of the team looks at the digital communities. Innovation Incubator, I've got a part of the team that just helps people with crazy, disruptive ideas put those ideas into practice and to try lots of different things. You don't spend a year on it, but you try new ideas really quickly to see if we can get traction. And then the last part of the team is AI and artificial intelligence. So what is innovation? What do you think innovation? When somebody says innovation, what do you think? Find a better way to do something. Change. New ideas. Solving problems. So the word change brings about like fear and trepidation for a lot of people because they fear that what that change is. So we're not talking about change just for change's sake. I think innovation, I've got a few words like fresh ideas that create value, tangible outcomes, challenging status quo, thinking outside the box, taking calculated risks. So we are very risk averse. And we've got to take risk. We've got to take calculated risk. And we're looking for outcomes that are not just an outcome, but something that's going to transform. So that's kind of those are the things that my team spends a lot of time focusing on. I talked about digital engagement. This is not a promo for what we do, but I do want you to see, last year, our team at the IMB did digital engagement, so using social media engagement. What normally is we understand what the felt needs of the people are. So we're not talking about, hey, y'all come, we're having Chick-fil-A for lunch at the church, or tonight is lasagna night at Wednesday night supper. That's not digital engagement. That's really bad advertising. That's not digital engagement. Digital engagement is understanding the community that you live in, understanding what keeps those people up at night, and then creating content that drives at those issues. And so people would then be interested and you start a conversation. So we had 25.9 million people saw an ad last year, over 78,000 people we had interaction with. Like we were interacted with WhatsApp or an SMS message or Facebook Messenger or Instagram or some other social media. We had 5,500 prayer conversations, over 4,000 gospel presentations, 428 in-person meetings. Now, the bottom of the funnel, if you look at this as a funnel, the bottom is getting kind of murky because we had a lot more of those in-person meetings. We just don't do really well at accounting for those. But the goal of our digital is to get people offline, having physical contact with people. So that's a little bit of what we do on the digital engagement side. We mentioned the book. It'll be free tomorrow on Amazon. In typical Amazon, it was supposed to be free today, and they did not do that. So I was hoping you could just click this QR code, go download it, and it would be free. You could just buy the Kindle version for free. We don't make any money on it. We market as cheap as they'll let us sell it, but I get to give it away a few days a year, and tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, it will be free. So if you wanted to download it, you don't have to read it. Because at the end of every chapter, there's a little QR code. If you scan that, I'll pop up on your computer or on your phone, and I'll explain the chapter to you. A little video of me, and it's really not me; it's an AI me that'll explain everything that was in the book. That's like another innovation. Like we're trying to think about the fact that people don't read. How do we get content to people? So I don't have time, but I would love to talk to you about the whole book and the concept of the book and all the research we did. Grant and I spent a couple of years meeting with over 400 people all over the world. So it's a global perspective of how people get information. And it was sort of surprising to me how little people are reading. Highly, highly, highly educated people are just not reading books. So in our circles, sometimes the answer is, oh, we need something disciple. Let's get them a discipleship book. And people just are not readers. You can say, well, I know somebody that reads a lot. That's fine. I'm talking about lost people or people who are coming to faith. More and more of those folks are not readers. They can read, they just don't like to. Innovation. So digital communities, I talked a little bit about that. These are across generations. People think of like gamers as, 22-year-old boys who live in their parents' basement. Over half of them are not that. There's a significant number of older people getting into gaming and getting into digital communities and esports. So like breaking through some of those preconceived ideas. This is that virtual natives thing I was talking a little bit about. 70% have built a community of friends through online experiences. By 2030, so it's easy for us, and as he sat there and said, I've been with the IMB 28 years, I thought, man, I'm getting old. And as I look across the room, I'm not alone in that. By 2030, 30% of the world will be Gen Z. And so it's probably time for us Gen Xers or older to stop like throwing bombs at Gen X or Gen Z and start realizing that about a third of the workforce is going to be Gen Z. At the IMB, we're looking at that, like what percentage of our people are going to be in that category? And it's really easy for us to look at things, well, I remember back in the good old days. Well, the good old days are gone, and these are the new days. And so it's probably time for us to realize that there's a whole nother perspective that's coming in. And good old days weren't all that good for us either. So we see things through our glasses. 60% of virtual natives, and that's Gen Z and below, these are people who've never known a day when they've not had this little device. Like I can remember my first cell phone. Some of you remember back in the early 90s, it was a bag. It was about this big, weighed about 3 pounds and maybe 5 pounds. And it cost like 50 cents a minute to make a phone call. And texting didn't even exist. Well, that's happened in our lifetimes. Like that's happened in the last 30 years. So when we start talking about where things are headed and we get into this AI stuff, don't be surprised that the things that we've just become so accustomed to in the last 15 years, because this has not been around that long. The next 15 years, we will not even be able to recognize where we're headed. So, all right. Talked a little bit about that already. We don't need to get into that. How many of you have used AI? All right. I'm not going to ask the other question because some of you would raise your hand. And I usually say, how many of you have not used AI? Don't raise your hand. Because every single one of you have used AI. And everybody in this room has used it and probably have used it today. If you got up this morning and you didn't know where the church was and you opened up Waze or Google Maps or Apple Maps, you used AI. That's AI. It's looking at what's happening, it's predicting the best, the most economical, the fastest route to get somewhere based upon current. That's AI. If you've used Siri or Alexa or whatever it is, make my everybody's watch is about to go off. So if you've used any of those tools, you've used AI. So the thing that's come about in the last 26 months or so, or 28 months or so, has been this whole idea of chatting with generative AI. So when ChatGPT came out, not anybody knows me wouldn't be surprised. That day, I started playing with it. That day. I'd been looking at AI solutions for about 4 years before that. So when it became accessible to the masses, I went to our core leadership team and I said, this changes everything. The next month, that next January, it came out at the end of the year. Then in January, we had our global leadership retreat, and I was giving my update, and I said, this will be as transformational as Gutenberg. And everybody in the room looked at me like I had an extra eyeball on my forehead. They're not looking at me like that anymore. I think they realize this is going to be transformational. And it's going to be great, and it's going to be bad all at the same time. It's going to solve so many problems, but it's going to create new problems. I've got some friends who are totally anti-AI. Maybe some of you are in the room. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm never going to use it. The things you can do with cancer research today, that you can build a drug that is built specifically for you and your body and your cancer that you have. You can't do that without AI. We just don't have enough smart people in the world to sit there and develop that type of solution. But an AI model can run millions of scenarios just rapidly and spit them out. So the types of things, the breakthroughs that we're going to have are absolutely amazing. I was with Jim Cooley at a Rotary Club meeting in Birmingham. This has been 4 or 5 years ago, and the guy was fascinating. He talked about self-driving cars, and you can think what you want about self-driving cars. I have one. They're phenomenal. It's awesome. And I just get in it, click a little button, and it takes me to the office. I don't do anything. It is amazing, and it is only going to get better. The worst thing you have about it is the one you're having right now. Tomorrow's going to be better, and the technology will continue to get better. But the guy who presented it, he blew my world. And Jim and I've talked about this. He sat there, we're at Birmingham. He said, how many of you are doctors at UAB? People raise their hand. Well, what are you going to do for transplants whenever we don't, because we get a lot of transplants from car accidents. What are you going to do when the car accidents drop significantly? What are you going to do how many of you sell car insurance? How many of you sell health insurance? All the industries that are affected by one disruptive technology, and that is that. This is not, I don't know how this is not making it on the news more and more, but we're going to see a labor revolution in the next 24 to 36 months. with robots being able to do so much of the manual labor that we do today. So much of the manufacturing process can be done really rapidly, and it will work 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. It doesn't get sick. It won't sue you. It doesn't get discriminated against. It doesn't phone in sick. It doesn't get addicted to drugs. It doesn't get sexually harassment suits. It's just a robot that will just do that task over and over and over again. That's going to have ramifications for the people sitting in the pews of your churches. Right? We've got to be thinking about that. Now, it may not be 24 months, but there's no way we get to 2030 and this hasn't had a significant impact. And it's going to hit us in the US, and it's going to hit developing countries even harder, where there's inexpensive labor. If you don't believe this, Paul Chitwood, the president of the IMB, he sent me a video a few weeks ago of he and Michelle were in California, and Michelle ordered a coffee, and a robot made the whole coffee for them, did the pour over, did the latte art, picked it up and sat it down, and it put a video, like a thing down. It said Michelle on it, and she just reached down there and picked it up. No human was involved in making that. So we can debate whether or not that's the best way we should be doing this. It's what's happening. And so I'm not here to say, yay, let's do this. I'm just saying these are the things that are happening. Manufacturing, this is going to be significantly affected. All right, AI. How many of you have tried using something like ChatGPT or some other tool and you go, this is horrible. This does not work? You can raise your hand and nobody's going to judge you. Because we've all done that. The first time I used it, I'm like, what in the world? This doesn't work. I think some of you are just not being honest, because I only saw a few hands go up, and either you haven't used it or you just maybe didn't hear my question. But how many of you have looked at it, tried it, and go, this just doesn't, I don't see the big deal. All right, let me describe this as, so this is a picture that I made using AI of what I call the Library of Congress. It's not, but just imagine that's the Library of Congress. And imagine you go into the Library of Congress and you say, I think I want to study about the pink-footed tarantula of Suriname. And you walk into the Library of Congress, which is quite a large library, got a lot of books, got a lot of resources, and you just start picking up books and you just open it and you flip through it. Nope, nothing in here about pink-footed tarantulas. You throw it down. You pick up another book and you start flipping through it. Nothing in here about pink-footed tarantulas. And you do that until you've got a table full of books, and you just decide this just isn't going to work. Everybody's all talking about this Library of Congress thing. It doesn't even have anything about pink-footed tarantulas. Well, obviously, I'm assuming the Library of Congress has something about pink-footed tarantulas. I think this happens a lot with AI. People will start using it and they'll treat it like they treat Google or some other tool, and they don't ask for help. So if this guy had gone into the Library of Congress, asked a librarian, or gotten on a computer and looked it up, he could have been sent right to the resource he needed. But because he didn't do that, he just starts trying, then he gets dissatisfied. I think a lot of folks with AI have not learned how to ask the right questions or not learned how to use the tools, and they just decided, I don't really understand what the hype is. When you start using the tools and you start realizing the capabilities, you'll understand what the hype is. But there is a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not as big as you think it is. All right. Here's a video. So some of you are here and you do media. One of the challenges we have is that we have people serving in places that we can't say who they are or where they're serving, but we want to tell the story. I want to tell the narrative of that person in a way that is engaging to you and you understand it. So this is a video that was produced by South Carolina Baptist. So their media team, so no competition here, Alabama Baptist, but South Carolina has produced this, and we're working with them to produce some more. So maybe we can get Alabama to do better than South Carolina. We'll get a little friendly competition going. But I want to show you this video that they sent me after they had worked with some of our people. And this is a young lady who comes out of South Carolina and is doing a role. Just watch the short video. Yeah. All right. I'm going to take a question or two while I get this pulled up. Any questions so far before we get into some of the tools we'll use? Yeah.
I figured out just in the last few weeks, I wrote an email, and I'm terrible at grammar and correction, and I dumped it into ChatGPT. And it wrote the most incredible email to my choir that I've ever seen.
All right. So he said he had used ChatGPT to help him write an email to his choir. Anybody use ChatGPT for doing stuff like that? All the time? So, okay, what are some challenges doing that? Anybody? Hallucinations? Yeah. What do you mean by hallucinations? Yeah. And it's pretty confident that it's right. I mean, it'll come across as, yes, this is absolutely the truth, and it may not be. What are some other issues that you have with that?
Incorrect dates, like Saturday, May 11th, just recently, but I caught it. But I mean, I'm like, where did you get that? But yeah, I was like May 11th for Mother's Day, and it put the date in and put Saturday, May 11th. So you definitely still have to proofread everything.
Yep. Yeah. You need a human in the loop. What else?
Well, ChatGPT specifically is limited on its training, so you can't, you include data, for example, in the last couple of years.
Yeah. So it's limited on its training. It's a lot more frequent now than it was 6 or 8 months ago because now you can turn on live web access. So it can be pretty much up to date. But there's limitations. I'm thinking more on authenticity.
Personal, making it personal.
Yeah, so making it personal. Now, what you did, just a second, but what you did, I like. I wrote an email, but I didn't go to school to become an English major. And I write my email, and I use an AI tool to help my email be better. You didn't go and say, hey, write my choir and say we're practicing on Thursday and just write the email for me. So I know people who do that. I've actually read students, I teach some undergrad and master's level classes, and it's painfully obvious when a student uses AI because it just sounds ingenuine or sometimes too good, but normally it just doesn't sound like they wrote it. And it's fluff. It sounds artificial. So
You can tell it in tone.
yeah, you can tell that you can, but I mean, at some point I told one student, it's like, man, you've spent so much time getting the AI to do the job. You could have just done the job. I think that is changing, but the concern I have about something like this is if it gets out, I didn't even spend the time to create an email. I just let AI do that. That's not what you did, but I just want to give that danger because it gets really good and you think, wow, that's pretty cool. And then you realize, it doesn't quite sound like you wrote it. You had something back here?
I just have observed that AI does not appear to have the inclination or capacity to say, I don't know. I mean, it's got to write something and it has to write something in a fairly decent quantity.
That is absolutely correct. I like to liken AI to an awesome college intern. Like that college intern is super enthusiastic. It just wants to help, but it's never going to say, I don't know how to do something. And it probably thinks it does know how to do it, even though we're looking at it going, you're clueless. And sometimes that's what AI does. It'll just spout off stuff and you're going, that's not right. It used to be much worse. Like in the early days, it was really bad. Now it's getting a whole lot better. Anybody else? What would be
I uploaded a lot of myself to that. I only use one AI. I uploaded it, I did everything about me, the way I speak, the way I write, my personality, and just learned that.
Yeah.
Giving me back more personal, real.
Yeah. We're going to get into ethics and security concerns in a later session. It'll give you pause if you use something like ChatGPT. I'm just gonna throw it out. I'm not a big fan of ChatGPT. I use it, but I have lots of reservations about it because of how much data it knows. If you wonder whether or not it's learning on what you're putting into it, just go into ChatGPT and say, "Who am I?" Write a bio about me. It is pretty scary. I said, make an image of me as of a superhero action figure. And it had me holding a Mac computer, drinking a cup of coffee, wearing a UAB sweatshirt. And on the computer said innovation. And I'm like, that's a little bit too much information about me. So we're going to get into that. This is a positive session. We're going to get in. I'm going to burst your bubble in a little bit about some of the concerns you need to be worried about. But so here's the video. Hopefully it'll work on this one.
Today, I just got to share the gospel with someone who had never heard it in their own language. If somebody told me back when I was an 8-year-old that I'd be on this kind of adventure, I wouldn't have believed them. Ever since I was a little girl, I'd always read these stories and think, what would it be like if I could actually live like Paul? If I could see God work like they did? What if I gave everything to God? What could happen? What started as a whisper grew louder and louder until I had to do something about it. If you had any idea how many times over these past years that I thought this was never going to happen, it could only be a dream. But now it's my reality. So here I am. And when God says go, you go.
So what are your thoughts on that? What are just your impressions?
My initial thought is that the story is spot on, the message is spot on, but I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's cynicism, but I immediately say, is this authentic? I can't get past the crispness of things that shouldn't be crisp.
Okay.
You seem naive.
Okay. So you're thinking about the story it's told. So let me say, we're not doing a good job of telling our stories. We do not tell a good job of telling stories of the narrative of what it means. In my world, the missions. Like, what is it? She's not naive. It's hard. I think she went into it and she's being honest. And I watched that because I know her. And it makes me very emotional to watch that. All right, I want to speak to the video people in the room. I know I've got people in the room who do video production. Where are you? Raise your hands. All right. If I were to give you the task I want a 1-minute video promotion of a journey girl who has been sent out from First Baptist Birmingham and is living in a country in Asia. Give me a timeline and a budget.
I mean, I can tell you this, if there's any way that that person could give me their own B-roll, their own footage, I think it could be very affordable. But to make something that, yeah, I mean, you're talking about, I mean, when you think about plane tickets and...
I think plane tickets may be the cheapest part of this.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So like, what's a budget? What's a budget to produce one video like this?
That, 25 to 50,000.
Yeah. So those of you who are not video people, that may be surprising to you. $25,000 to $50,000. How long would it take to produce this?
To produce what we just saw.
Yeah. With all the other stuff you're doing, this isn't your only job. You know, we've come to Mitch and, hey, I need you to go do this. Working into your workload, how long? I'm thinking 6 months to 9 months. I'm also thinking on the other side of the world, what that missionary's life is like, of trying to line up how to get in there, how to shoot the video. I'm also thinking of the idea, because I have been the guy that said, hey, all I need you to do is shoot me a little B-roll and send it to me. And I wait, and I wait, and I wait. So here's the thing. What you say is spot on. It's too crisp. So I was telling somebody I created an audio version of our book, the book you won't read. And I don't have time to create an audio version. I also don't have like $8,000 to pay a voice artist to do it. So I used an AI tool that we use, and I cloned my voice. And in about 2.5 hours, I created the whole audio book of me reading the book. And I never read the book. And it sounds just like me. It's eerily scary. I uploaded it to Audible, and they rejected it because it was too good. There was no noise in the audio. And I'd never done this. And I realized, oh, people do this. There's a plugin you put in, and it creates artifacts in the audio to make it sound like it was recorded in the studio instead of being too perfect. Then I uploaded it to Audible, and it worked. And they accepted it, and it sounds just like me. So there are lots of things that you can do with this. I think that these videos are getting better and better. So you may, how much do you think it costs to make that video? About $3,000. So, but no cameras were needed. And that was the other thing. So like if I'm producing a video, I'm assuming that you're bringing with you all the equipment and the video editing and the cameras. And then what if I wanted that video in another language? If I needed it in 10 other languages, what's the budget cost going to be for that? So I think that the authenticity issue is a real issue. I think it's becoming less and less of an issue as more and more people are exposed more and more to this type of media. We'll see where it ends. I love the fact that they're going to be able to produce 27 stories in a very short period of time of all 27 of the journeymen. I think it's 27, it may be more. But all the journeymen that have gone out through this one program, they're going to create those videos for each one of them. That's insane. Like, we've never been able to do that. And I think that's going to resonate with young people to see you can be a missionary. You can go do this. And here's the story of someone else who's just like you that went. The other issue is the security issue. I can't bring a camera into the country where this was shot. I mean, I just can't do it. I cannot shoot footage in that country. But now we can recreate that. So there's a lot of positives and concerns as well. All right, we're going to pause. Some of you need to hit the restroom. Some of you need more coffee, and then we're going to get into the next session. But I want to give you one or two questions before we head into break. Anybody? Yeah.
How do we, in the future, know that anything we see is authentic or real?
Yeah, so how do you know if it's
We
real?
make up stories about these missionaries that don't even exist.
Yeah.
So how do we determine that from sitting in the pew going, that girl's doing a great job, and there's nobody there?
Yeah, and so a lot of that's in trust, and a lot of that is helping people understand when AI is used, when it's appropriate. I don't think you need to declare that you cleaned up your grammar with in your email, but if you are producing something from scratch, and I think, yeah, we'll get in. There's a whole session on that. All right. Any other questions? I'm going to let you have 5 minutes. All right. Take a 5-minute break. We're going to come back. So before we go any further, I want to get a little bit about what is AI, a little bit deeper into what's actually happening when you use AI. And we've got some tools that I want you to try out and play with. So hopefully you brought a phone. Hopefully you brought a computer. I want, especially later in the presentations, we're gonna give you some assignments to work on at your tables, and we'll see what you can pull off. All right. So what is AI? How do you define AI? Just spitball some answers. The Terminator. Open the pod bay doors. All right. I'm old. So trying to replicate human intelligence with a machine. What else? How do you define AI?
A very intelligent, highly motivated assistant.
Very intelligent, highly motivated assistant. Yes, I think that's good. One more.
It's a helpful tool for doing things.
A helpful tool for doing things. I like this audience because a lot of times I'll get people that are really on the negative side of things, and there's enough to be negative about. But I like to at least start with the positives of the awesome breakthroughs that we can see with this and how we can make it a part of our daily lives, how we can use it. Here's some definitions that I usually use. I can't decide on one, so I'm just going to share all of them. AI is a field of technology where we teach machines or computers to mimic human intelligences. It understands behavior. It can learn. It can solve problems. It can learn from its experiences. And if some of you are taking pictures of slides, if you want these, I'll share them on a website, and you can go download all these. AI is getting computers to do some things that humans would normally do. That's kind of my favorite definition, but it's not as comprehensive. But that's really what it is. It's getting it to help me write my email better. It's taking my annual goals, because I do SMART goals with our team, and we're recording this, so I'm not going to use any names, but like I got some people that sometimes don't write the smartest SMART goals, and they're not definable. They're just poorly written. So I've created a chat, like an AI tool that they can do their best job at writing their best goals, and then it'll make the goals SMART goals. So it'll if you don't know what SMART goals are, Google it or ask an AI tool, and it'll explain what SMART goals are. AI is a system or machine learning that acts like humans. So that should make you a little bit uncomfortable, hopefully. What is not? So a lot of times, a lot of the problems I hear are things that people say that AI is, and it really is not those things. So AI is not conscious or sentient. So the RoboCop thing it's here and it's out and it's to go kill and do these things. There's a whole debate about the AGI, whether or not we're going to ever get to general intelligence and where AI is thinking. I think that it's kind of the target keeps moving on this. 4 or 5 years ago, I would tell you there's no way it can never happen. I'm not saying that it never can happen. I do think that machines are as smart. There's a lot of research, and I can share with you some links that we're not going to get into, but you can look at where 2 years ago, some of these things were performing at like a college level, and now some of these things are performing at, you take the sum of all PhDs on this topic, and it can discuss it at that level. So it is getting much, much better. But it's still not conscious, and it's not sentient. It's just very well programmed. AI does not have emotions or intentions. On your tables, you have these, or when you checked in, I gave every one of you this little card. It's called FaithBot. And so FaithBot, we'll talk a little bit more about it. I developed this because as we do digital engagement, you have 70 million or 20 million people seeing something, and 70,000 people writing messages. A lot of that is haters, or they're people who are sending you porn, or people who are yelling at you, or people who are, arguing. And so the idea is that the AI could ascertain really quickly, is this a possible gospel conversation? Or is this just someone who's yelling at me? And so if it's just someone that's yelling at me and sending me stuff I don't want to look at, or the responders, then we can have an AI chat bot that can respond always as a Christian should, and just offer resources back and forth with them. Then I realized, actually, this would be kind of cool as you're sitting in, not that it would happen with Jim Cooley, but you've been in sermons sometimes and you go, I don't really think that's right. And I can tap this with my phone, or I can go to the website and ask a question, and the AI it's like Logos on steroids. It comes back with like all these awesome resources and explains different meanings. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But it doesn't have emotions or intention. It's not trying to do anything. It does not have volition. It operates based upon programming and data input. It can scare you, and you go, how is it doing this? How does it know all this? But it really is just really good programming on those computers. It doesn't have that desire to do anything. Why you shouldn't be afraid. AI is not a surprise to God. He gave us the intelligence to build AI. So this isn't, it's like, I just don't know what to do. Mankind has created this AI. We don't create. God allows us to create. So God's not taken by surprise by this. Will it be used for evil? Yes. without a doubt. And most everything that we encounter are used for evil. And so that the two things can be true at the same time. It can be used for evil, and it can also be a tool that's used for good. We've got to take the lead in discussing the ethical considerations. The next session is all about ethics and AI. So if we are not engaging in it, then we're letting other people have those discussions. It's a tool. It's not a replacement for humanity. So I am intentionally building in more pause and concern when I talk about AI than I have done in the past. In the past, I have talked about AI, and I'm so excited about the things that we're doing with AI and the possibilities and potential that I sometimes have come across as totally ignoring the concerns. So I'm not ignoring them. I'm just not letting my fear or those concerns dictate that we're not going to do something. So if you follow some things I'll share, I've intentionally been writing a lot over the last month on here's some things that Christians need to be aware of. Here's some things that we need to be looking at. So I'm intentionally building in now more of a balance, even though it's always been what I've thought. It's just not always come across in the presentations. So it's rapidly changing. When was the first time how many of you, the first time you used a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude has been this year? All right, a good number of you. How many of you used them late last year? Okay, how many of you used them like me, like the first day it came out and the first day it was released? Yeah, so a good number. So here's the good news for those of you, or how many of you have never used AI yet? All right. I mean, AI, generative AI. We know you're using the other stuff. So here's the good news. Those of you who have not used this, you're not that far behind the people who know the most about how to use this in common usage. I'm not talking about the computer programmers from the 1950s. I'm talking about the people who are using generative AI today. You're not that far behind them. And if anybody comes to you and says, I'm an expert in this, I do not say that. If they tell you that, I would be a little bit suspicious of most of them because they probably have not been using it that much longer than the rest of us. They've just gone down the wormhole a little bit faster than the rest of us. So you can catch up on this, and it's not that difficult to use, as you're going to see. The other thing I would say is that AI is doing stuff today that I look at and go, what in the world? I can't believe that it's able to do some of the things that it's doing. So I'm going to show you now some of these changes.
Hello everyone, I'm glad you're here. Today, we're embarking on an incredible journey, a journey that spans from the creation of the world to the life of Christ. This is a story that has inspired millions, a story of hope for all of mankind.
So we're not going
Have you ever had...
to watch...
Have you ever had...
All right, I'm going to go here. We're not going to watch all the video because it's about a 2-minute... I was pretty quick there. I did get it on me. So we're not going to go through all of this, but I do want you to see that was October 2023. So you saw she was a little stodgy. It didn't look very natural. The cool thing is that prompt, I created that using a tool called Synthesia, and the prompt went something like, hey, I'm working with VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University students. I would like for you to create a gospel presentation that would appeal to these issues that college students at VCU are dealing with. My audience is a female between the ages of 19 and 24. And it created a gospel presentation based upon the creation to Christ story, which blew me away that it was able to do that. That was October 2023. So let me fast forward a little bit. So this was a video.
Maybe you're in that place right now where you want to turn your life around. And you know somewhere deep in your soul, there could be some decisions that you have to make. Like, you know, like it's like something was decided for you. And instead of trying to make something that is done work, it's like the invitation is to make the decision, commit to that, and to start.
This was a year ago. This was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 months after the first video.
And we're saying yes to something else.
All right, come on.
But that involves a lot of unknown. to want something different for yourself. It's okay.
So this one's a little more lifelike and more realistic. So I would also tell you the first one was based upon the video capture of a lady, and that was an avatar that was created off of that lady. This lady does not exist. This right here is the photo doesn't exist. This is a totally synthetically generated video based upon a compilation of what women of her age might be. So we went from October 2023 to May 2024. That was the rapid change. Thoughts? All right, somebody say scary. I see, I'm not scared by that, but I can see where some people would look at that.
Even her eyebrows are sisters, not twins.
Yeah. Yeah. So like anybody remember, she said her eyebrows are not twins, they're not perfect. So anybody remember like the last year, a little over a year ago, like the huge thing was the Pope wearing the puff jacket. You remember that picture that went viral? So, I mean, that picture, when you look at it today, you go, my goodness gracious, that looks horrible compared to the creation you can do today with AI-generated images, which is crazy. And I did show you this video. We're not going to watch it again. So that video was done in November 2024. And the difference between this one is there's actually a narrative that's being woven and told, and it's a little bit more difficult. Like those earlier ones, it was just basically text to video, and there wasn't a lot in it. This is a lot more. And the reason that one costs around $3,000 is the computer, the AI models themselves that you're utilizing to create that video. So you're paying for the usage of those tools. All right. So I'm just curious, those of you who say you're using it, you said you're using it, you've used it some just to clean up some emails. What are some other uses that now that you've seen these things, what are other ways that you're using AI today? Brainstorming. Ideation is one of my favorite things to do. Like, I want to do this. What would be 10 ways to do that? So, all right. So people are looking at me like I'm crazy. Give an example of how you're doing this.
When I'm doing my calendar for my youth events, I ask it, what are 50 events that I could possibly do this year? And it will give me a list of those things, and it will even tell me, here's some supplies you need for those events.
Yeah. So he said if he's doing some activities for youth events, he said, give me 50 ideas of things that I could do with my youth this year, and it'll give him 50 ideas, and it'll even give him the supplies that you need. And I will say, and he probably will agree with me, maybe half of those ideas are really bad. But the other half, you're like, wow, that's really good. So I travel a lot, and I now, when I'm traveling, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to be in this country, in this city. I've got an afternoon. I would like to know more about the local culture. I don't care about the tourist stuff. I want to understand the people. And so it'll give me ideas for how to go and make observations in that city. Somebody else, how are you using AI today?
Sermon titles.
Okay, sermon titles. Break that out a little bit.
I mean, I'm terrible with titles, and so it gives great ideas. And sometimes I'll use a piece of one. I'll say, give me 10 possible sermon titles for a sermon on this passage of scripture with this as the focus.
Okay, so just so we capture that, he may say, hey, I'm preaching on this topic, on this scripture verse or this passage, and here's the focus of my sermon. Give me 10 different sermon titles for that, and it'll help with that. Somebody else?
Yeah, I've done that. Enter the sermon that I've written in, and it's even better.
Yeah, so he'll put the whole sermon in, and it'll give him that back. All right?
I'll talk to it on my commute.
Yeah.
And get it to help me internalize content.
Yeah, so like just while you're driving, you talk to it, like you literally just speak to it, and it'll help internalize content, give you feedback. I do that a lot.
Designed my mission team t-shirts for this summer.
Designed his mission team t-shirt for this summer. All right?
gives me step-by-step instructions in QuickBooks Payroll.
All right, QuickBooks Payroll, step-by-step instruction. So I think that as a staff, if you're on a church staff and you've got multiple people that you're working with, I think it'd be a healthy thing to do if periodically over lunch, you have a lunch and learn and you just say, hey, let's talk today. We're all going to go, Jim's going to go to Speedy Gonzalez and get us all Speedies from Hueytown. We're going to bring it back to First Baptist. We're going to eat those awesome chips with that salt on it. We're going to sit there and we're going to eat that, but we're going to talk about how we're using AI and encourage that, especially if you're the leader. It would give people permission to think about how they're using AI and to be more honest and open about it. If you're concerned about how people are using it, get them talking about how they're using it. All right? More ideas.
Similar to his, teach me how to use Printify in 30 days.
Yeah. Teach me how to use Printify in 30 days. So, totally non-mission related. Last week, any of your wives have a honey-do list for you? So I have a honey-do list, and it's in a note on my phone, and there's a checkbox, and she'll add stuff to it. One of the things that's been on there has been, we've got some three-way switches. Well, we had some electrical. She wanted me to change out the ceiling fan, did that. Then all of a sudden, they were too bright because it's like really, really bright. So I needed to change out the three-way switch, but I wanted to make them smart switches because everything in my house needs to be smart. And there's all these ideas. But I do electricity, lived overseas for 24 years. So I'm kind of a master electrician, master plumber, master mechanic. I'm not really. Nothing meets code, but I can do all that out of necessity. So, but I'm getting a little, this is getting a little tricky because it's a dimmer three-way. So I took a picture of the existing installation, both sides, dropped it into the AI model and said, hey, I'm installing some dimmer switches. I forget, which is the line, which is the load, what's the traveler? 38 seconds later, here's the same picture labeled line, load, traveler. And I'm like, oh, sweet. So I just did that, put the lights out, put it back together. I didn't shock myself. I didn't get killed. Flipped the switch. It worked. The first thing I do when I'm trying to do something now is try to think about how AI could help me do that. So I grew up, my very first car, 64 and a half, candy apple red Mustang. It was awesome. But the Ford Fix or Repair Daily thing actually meant something. And I had to learn how to fix my car, from the carburetor to the starter to everything on that car. And I had, any of you that are my contemporaries, how did you learn how to do that?
That's right.
Haynes or a Chilton manual? And then I asked my dad, and he'd usually not know the real answer, but he was very confident, just like that AI model, of how to break it, how to fix it. Or I would ask a friend. So I learned by going to a manual, looking it up. There were very few images, just text. For the last 10 years, how have you learned how to do anything? YouTube. Yeah, we never knew we needed to change an air filter underneath the glove box until they started charging us $70 to do it. And so now you can just YouTube, and it's like, what? This takes me 8 seconds. I mean, it's click, click, done. YouTube, for anything you want to do. Well, here's the deal. YouTube is not as good as AI. AI can walk you step by step by step, and it's more efficient. You don't need to watch 38 minutes with half of it being advertisements. You can just go in and it'll draw it in one by one by one. So not ministry related, but maybe it'll be helpful, and you don't get shocked when you're doing your home electricity. Any other uses that you're doing?
I did a presentation to my youth parents for choir tour. And when I put it all in there, at the end it said, would you like a packing list?
Yeah, would you like a
Based
packing
on
list?
what I put in there, knowing it's a church, it gave me a packing list that said, modest appropriate clothing, modest appropriate bathing suit.
And then you went in and defined what modest and appropriate bathing suit really is. But yeah, so for those type of things, really helpful. About 90% of it's going to be spot on. About 10% of it, you're going to go, what in the world are you thinking? So you don't like just take AI stuff and use it. Is to help you speed up that process. Way back over here.
Yeah, so taking the Sunday morning sermon and then creating a child-appropriate version of it for children's church.
Awesome. Taking the Sunday morning sermon and creating a child-appropriate version of that. Now, I am going to give you some tools in the last session today that you can do that. You can just drop in a sermon and it can give you coloring book pages. It'll make those. It'll make the children's sermon. It'll make age-appropriate small group discussion leaders' guides, all based upon your sermon. It'll also take your sermon and evaluate your sermon, which I think we need more of because most of our evaluation has been our wives, and eventually they just give up. So the AI can be brutally honest, and it actually has been really helpful for me. Yeah. Good question. So do you get better results with AI if you type it in, if you upload it, or you speak it? And so that's a complicated answer. So if you're talking about typing or talking, it's really the same thing. It's really the same input. There's some ways that you can give better context to AI by giving it a knowledge base. You can add content. So like for our writers, I've created a thing that'll help them make sure that their writing is within the style guide. Or it'll also read your article and say, based upon this article, I think your call to action you're trying to do is this. So in order to get it to do that, I've given it a knowledge base of what our style guide is and examples of well-written stuff. And I don't have to give it bad examples. It'll know those. And so just giving it the more context, and we build out, I would call those more like a tool, not an AI that you're just going in every time and recreating it. And so these are like AI tools that you can build. And the more context you give it, the better it's going to be. So, all right, any other ideas?
What are you using if you're not using chat?
That was my question.
Okay, so what models are there that you can use? So in the next session, we're going to talk about ethics. We're going to talk about what's happening with your data. So ChatGPT, I will use for stuff that I really don't care about, but anything that has any personal information or stuff about kids or stuff about members or stuff that if ever got out, it would be really bad. So like, I don't want to put personally protected information about anybody into those because they are training, especially if you're using the free version of these tools, you are the product. And I cannot stress this enough. If you put something in, they are training on that data. Just like Gmail is a free tool, but every email that goes in, Google is training on that data. And so for us, we have serious concerns about, I can't put in people's names or where they're serving or what they're doing or any of that because I don't want it to somehow leak out. So we build, and I'm not saying everybody should go this route, but I think that if you are using a lot of personal information, you should consider using an open source model. So something like Llama, or there's a bunch of open source models that you can take, download the model, serve it up on your own server or locally on your computer, or like we use a cloud-based thing that only we use that model. So imagine having your own. Most of you know ChatGPT, but imagine it being totally disconnected from OpenAI and you taking all of that model and you stick it over here and you're just working with it locally and it's not connected to anything else. So that's what we built for what we're using our models for. And we use more than one model depending upon what we're wanting to do. If we need somebody writing code, it may use one model. If it's just this general ideation stuff, Llama 4 does fairly well. Llama 3.3, those work really well. The ChatGPT it's kind of like the Google that's out there. It's become, the brand that everybody just assumes, but there are other models out there. If your church is a Microsoft church, if you use those Microsoft free licensing, then you can use Microsoft Copilot. And Microsoft Copilot is based on ChatGPT, but it's separated out. So it's kind of carved out. So there's a little bit better protection using Microsoft Copilot than it would be if you're just using the ChatGPT. And there's at your table, there's something called Chip. And Chip is another company that's provided a bunch of tools that you can use for free. Or you can, I don't make any money from them. I don't work for them. I just really like working with them. And they have some other tools, like if you wanted some help, they can come alongside and help you build out some safe solutions. All right, any other ideas of how you're using it? Yeah.
You mentioned Microsoft, what about Mac?
Well, so Microsoft is just the Microsoft Office, which is on my Mac. So yeah, it's not the PC version. It's just the All right, any other ideas? Yeah.
I've seen it used in ministry to women or families who are on a tight budget. That this is the grocery budget, plan a menu for the week that falls within that budget, and it had menus. It had this is how much this cost at Walmart, kind of thing.
Yeah. So like using it to help people get on a budget, particularly if they're buying foods for kids and such, trying to help you with that. Yeah. Yes. So can different AIs interact with one another? Probably not the way you're using it. They're not going to do that, but absolutely AIs work with each other all the time. And if you're using a tool like Microsoft Office, they've got multiple AIs working in the background depending on what you're asking it to do. So, all right. So this is how we're using it. So I do want to move. Everybody should have gotten this when you came in. So if you've got a phone, this is what I'd like for you to do. I'd like for you to take it and tap it, just like you're tapping and paying at the coffee shop. Just take and tap. And it should open on your phone. If you're using a computer, you can just type faithbot.io, that little URL that's right there on the card. You can just type that and it'll go to that on your computer. And I want you to play around with this tool that we built it was built for digital engagement, but now I'm using it a good bit for just asking faith questions. You can use it. So some of the ideas that you all had about, hey, I'd like to write a sermon on this, or I'd like to have this sermon, I'd like to come up with a title, or I'm studying Exodus 22, what would be some takeaways from Exodus 22, or help me, here's my outline, or here's what I'm trying to communicate. Can you come up with an outline that I need to look at? And we're gonna get into ethics of this, but for now, I just want you to play around with FaithBot. And if you don't have a computer, you can see it up on the screen. I'll just play around with it a little bit. The help me understand a theological question would be when somebody comes at you with a really hard topic, or maybe you're just sitting around thinking just questions that you don't have an answer to. I would say that this is not the Bible. It is not replacing theologians. It's not replacing you studying the Bible. It is just to help think through different things. Hopefully you're using this in an ideation form, coming up with ideas or coming up with how to do things. I'll tell you one of the ways I used it recently. My pastor, I really like, Monty, he had preached a sermon one Sunday and it was really good. So I took the audio recording of his sermon and I dropped it in and I said, evaluate this sermon. And it came up and it did this evaluation based upon these criteria I'd given it. And I wrote him and I said, hey, good news, FaithBot approved of your sermon today. It said it was a really good, conservative, biblically accurate, Christ was central in the sermon, talked about salvation by grace. It was not works-based, on and on and on. He wrote back and said, well, that's really great, but your FaithBot probably says every sermon's good. So I went and I downloaded Joel Osteen's sermon from that day. I dropped Joel Osteen's sermon into FaithBot. I said, evaluate this sermon. It came back, and I kid you not, it said, I cannot endorse this sermon. This sermon is man-centered, and it gives the false sense that all God cares about is prosperity of mankind. And it went through and it just ripped him apart. So I know that everybody's like murmuring. Now you're worried that I'll find your sermons and I'll stick them in there. So I don't want you to hear me say, oh, well, this just replaces, human evaluating stuff. No, I sometimes would love to get some feedback, some unfiltered feedback on stuff that I'm doing. And so just taking it, putting it in there. And then on Monty's, I said, what do you think the purpose of his sermon was? What was his call to action if you're in marketing? What was the thing we're trying to get people to do? So imagine if you're in marketing, or you're working for the state paper, or you're doing something with WMU, and you have a product, a piece, and you're wondering, does this connect to my intended audience? And you can have the AI model do some evaluation of, are we actually communicating what we're trying to communicate? That's an excellent use of AI. All right, some of you are still playing around with FaithBot. I want your, what are your thoughts?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the information go anywhere?
So on this one,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I should. So this particular one, because we use this, I'll tell you how we used this recently in a country, and it was in a different language, but it's still the same bot. I don't know who uses it. I can't say, but we were researching. We had not done engagement in this country in a while. Engaging being getting into the country, sharing the gospel, figuring out what what keeps them up at night. So we ran ads on a social media platform there, spent $5 a day, had 3,700 people interact with this bot. For $20 in 4 days, had 3,700 people interact with the bot. And the ad was, are you curious about Christianity? FaithBot can help answer or something. It was just a really simple ad. 3,700 people in 4 days. And then I took the data and we dropped that into the AI model to say, identify patterns that people in this city are asking about Christianity. And then that information can then be used to feed into when we run ads in that city. We're trying to answer those questions because I know that of the 3,700 people, this number have asked this question. And if we run an ad answering that question, people are going to click the ad. So, but it is anonymized. I have no clue who is asking anything. But we, on this particular bot, we use that data to train on it.
You can geo-track
where it's coming. I could, not on this one, but yes, we could say this was from this country or that country. That's not turned on this. Yeah.
One of the dilemmas that I'm trying to work through is in sermon preparation, pastors are spirit-led to write sermons, right? And we pray through it, we do a lot of work. How do you guard against dependency on AI?
Next session.
Okay.
The whole on the ethics session, we're going to spend almost a whole hour talking about the ethics of this. So, but.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So can I put this on my website?
Yes. If you would like to put it on your website, I can make it look just like this. So this is a website in the UK that we use, and you could drop a little chat bar right here. You click it, and then FaithBot comes up. And you can change it to say, First Baptist Birmingham, and you can put your logo here, and you can change what's here, and you can even change these questions. But the knowledge base that it's pulling from, we've already built. You don't need to rebuild that.
You own FaithBot. I can be on FaithBot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said a while ago, ChatGPT at open source. If we build this, what you're talking about, coming and building under our own.
So hold on, let me back up really quickly. So this I don't remember which model we're using. I did not build the large language model for FaithBot. I trained the model to always respond as an evangelical Christian, Baptist, conservative. The master prompt for FaithBot is like yay big. It's enormous, and then it's trained on these foundational documents of what Baptists believe. So this is unapologetically Baptist. So if a Methodist wants to use it, they're welcome to, and maybe we can bring them over to become Baptist. But I'm not creating I have unapologetically built this bot to respond as best we can as an evangelical Baptist conservative. Now, we also know that the tent is pretty big, and hopefully it'll stay a big tent for Baptist. And so I'm not trying to get into the nuances of, well, this little tertiary issue. I'm hoping it avoids those. So far, I've been able to keep it to avoiding those. But if you find one that you disagree with, let me know, and I can tweak it a little bit more. Now, all of you are going in putting in controversial stuff right now. But you asked, can we put this on your website? And I would say yes. And I'm also, again, I'm not looking to, I don't make a penny off of any of these, but the companies that we work with that have helped us build some of these things, they would love to come and work alongside you. If we build it out right, it's like 3 lines of code you just add to your website, and it just puts that there automatically. And they do charge for that kind of stuff, but it's insanely cheap it's much cheaper than most people would think. But I don't get into any of that. I just build the tools and other people use it. So any other thoughts on FaithBot? And I know the ethics discussion we're going to get to, but
How do you know? I hear what you're saying about the world view of what's going into what you're receiving back. What about most of what's AI?
yeah, so I think this is why every church, you've got your own concerns and budgets and stuff, but I would carve out a little niche to be building out some solutions in this, and getting some of your people. They could be lay people in your church that are very interested in it. If you could set aside just a little bit of funding for them to do some of this stuff, I think it would be, you could get people interested who are going, wow, I had no idea that this could be part of a ministry that our church is involved in, or help build out some of these solutions. So this is why you don't want to just turn stuff over to AI. So how do I know? Is because I can put it in there and it comes back and it says Joel Osteen's sermon is good. There's a problem with that AI. So it's taken a lot of tweaking. It took me a few months to get that down to where I felt comfortable sharing it. And I'm still, every time I give it out, I'm fear and trepidation that it's going to say something stupid and I'm going to get fired. But hopefully that won't be the case. But we did a lot of testing, like lots of testing, and just asking it any possible question I could come up with. But
We had a former member recently ask about that, was upset because we believe in a female Holy Ghost. And so that was the question I just asked, was because how do I respond to that? As I didn't know, so I put in, I said, what does Southern Baptist believe about female Holy Ghost? And within seconds, put it all out, even gave scripture reference.
so that's the other piece that's really good. It should always anchor responses with scripture is one of the things that I intentionally built into this bot, so that it isn't even saying the Baptist Faith and Message says this. It is saying, according to this scripture, this scripture, this scripture. And so it still requires human intellect and be able to analyze it. But I use it a lot, and I've actually given it to our small group leader, who's great. But occasionally he'll say stuff, and I'm like, I'm not quite sure that that's how I would have said that. Or I might not necessarily think, that might be a little bit heretical. And so I gave it to him, and he uses it in his preparation. It doesn't write as, he's not using it to create his content, but he's using it, and he'll tell me all the time, man, this is awesome. How in the world are we going to teach on this topic or on this passage? And there was some, I don't even understand. And he goes in there, what are the divergent views? What are all the different possible interpretations? What's the most accepted? And he uses this a good bit. So We have another guy on staff who leads a small group, and he uses it all the time. And I was wondering, are people actually using this tool? So I took it down one Friday night to make some updates, and I forgot to turn it back on. And on Saturday, about 10 o'clock, I had multiple text messages coming in. Hey, FaithBot's down. And I was like, oh, I forgot. Let me get it. He's like, dude, I'm preparing. I got to have this right now. So I actually thought I could actually make a lot of money. We could do it for free on Mondays. But the closer you got to Sunday morning, the more expensive it gets to use the chat. And if you, after like 10 o'clock on Saturday night, shame on you, and you're going to pay a $500 penalty. I was just joking with him on that, but kind of joking.
Is this learning?
So no. So this is not a learning. This one's not set up for learning. So it is a static data set. And so you can ask it anything you want, and you're not going to influence the results. You're not going to be able to pollute it. So we have some other tools that we use that do learn, but this one was intentionally not learning because there's really not much more to learn about the stuff that we've put in here. Well, there's nothing else to learn, I don't think. So, I'm not saying this is a perfect tool. Just like I don't think my Bible software that I use is the perfect tool. Of which, by the way, if you use Logos or some Bible software, it's permeated with this type of stuff now. It uses AI a lot. One of my favorite ways of AI, any of you use Netflix or watch Netflix or any of those things? All right, you know how it's choosing what to serve you up next is AI. It's seeing your patterns, it sees what you like, it sees how long you stuck with a series, and it starts sharing other series. Things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, those things are like crack for your mind because it has created an algorithm based specifically on you. Nobody sits down and says, I think I'm going to watch 4 hours of cat videos. They watch one cat video, and 4 hours later, they're still watching cat videos because the algorithm is sitting there feeding you. That's into the unethical side of things that I want to talk about next hour. But those are things that we've got to be concerned with. And so how we build stuff. I'm always on the positive side of things, of positive how we can do this, but it is something to be concerned about. All right, play around with FaithBot. It's free. We built it for you to use. I gave out at Missional AI a few weeks ago in Dallas. I spoke there and I gave out these little NFC cards. I used to give out QR codes and people really would throw them away. I find that these people will feel a little more guilty about, and so they'll kind of stick them in their pocket, and it's kind of a trinket that you can get to tap. And so we've had, in the last month, we had over 10,000 new users of FaithBot, which to me blows my mind that many people are using it. All right. What is AI? AI is not Google. This is a big problem because a lot of people think that it's like Google. Google gives links, AI gives answers. If you go to Google and you're saying, hey, I'm traveling to Switzerland, I'm looking for places to stay, it'll give you a bunch of links about Switzerland and where to stay. I went in, Switzerland's on my mind because I am taking my wife there on a 30th anniversary late. This is not our 30th anniversary, but we missed the opportunity to do that. So we're going there, and I was like, I don't know where to begin. I've never been to Switzerland. I don't know that we're going to go after I found out how much it cost, but it was amazing. Like I would go to Google and I would do searches, but then I would go to AI and it would walk me through, oh, you have 3 days in this area. Consider these options. And it walked through all the things to see in those places, all the things to do. And I was like, hey, I'm actually on the other end of the budget that what you're suggesting. Oh, I see you're cheap. Okay, well, here are other options for you to do. And here's the bed that's 100 centimeters wide, and and you can share it, and it folds up at the end of the day. And that's $200 a night if you're curious. So AI gives links, Google gives links, AI gives answers, but you have to be clear. Like, you have to be very, very clear with AI what you're asking it to do. So if you're wanting to know something, explain that. You can just vomit a whole bunch of stuff into the chat. Like, hey, I want to do this. It doesn't have to be very coherently formatted. You just got to give it as much data points as you can. It'll come back. Treat it like a conversation. This is probably my favorite thing. It's, Google, you do it and you do another search, you do another search, you do another search. AI, you ask it a question, it gives you an answer, and you say, oh, well, that's great. Tell me more about that. But hey, just remember I'm on a budget. And oh, I forgot you're on a budget. Okay, here's these things. And you can go back and forth, and you started really broad and you've narrowed down. AI can do, not just find. Like, you can actually go on there and say, do this. I'm not comfortable doing these things yet, but you can use it like as an agent to go, just go ahead and book my plane or my train tickets. I wouldn't trust it with plane tickets. They're too expensive. But hey, go ahead and do this, or go ahead and open up this website, take me to this page. It can do it. Iteration is the key. If you treat it like, here's the solution I'm wanting, and it comes you back and it gives you the answer and it's not exactly what you want, and you just end it, you've probably failed. But if you keep iterating, you keep coming up with ideas on how to use it, or of what you're looking for, it'll keep getting better. Google static, AI is dynamic. It'll respond to what you're doing, and you can have that conversation with that. All right. Time for a break, but I want to do one little thing. So is AI in the Bible? Yeah. You got a question before we go?
Yeah, I wanted to hit on your iteration right there.
Uh-huh.
I have found, like, I'm trying to iterate with it, right? I'm trying, like, no, do this, don't do that, Sometimes I find, like, it's easier to start over.
So, okay, really good point. So if you're using something like ChatGPT or one of the other ones out there, a conversation that you start, you click new conversation. When you start chatting with it, everything in that conversation is building upon that conversation. And if now you've gone from planning a trip to Switzerland to, hey, I think I'm going to go visit my daughter in Auburn. What are some things to do in the afternoon? You've now conflated Switzerland with Auburn. I've been to Auburn. It's not Switzerland. It's much better. You're right. So you want to start a new chat. I know that sounds silly, but like, start a new chat, and it's like you get to start all over again. And if you start a new chat, it'll be fresh and it'll give you much better results. So if you start getting wonky results, you go, oh, wait, let me just start a new chat and start over. Especially if you're iterating and you go down a stream, you're over here and you go, I don't think I want to do that, and I want to go over here. Just start a new chat and do that. That's really good. All right. Finally, AI is in the Bible. Here you go. Who are our Hebrew scholars?
This is from Joshua.
Yeah. Yeah. So your Hebrew scholars would tell you, and the Lord said to Joshua, do not fear and do not be dismayed. Take with you all the people of war and arise. Go up to AI. All right. Some of you needed a little bit of humor. You were dozing off there. So I know it's different. It's different. But I just thought it was kind of funny. All right. I'm not going to give you time. We're not going to do another Mentimeter for now. I'm going to let you go to break. We'll come back at 11:10, and we'll do another session after that. I have not always done this session, and it's one that I just kind of assumed people would know where I stand on these. But I think it's really important for us to talk about. The very first thing that I did when I was asked to lead this for the IMB was I pulled together about 4 or 5 guys. One is a leader from Europe, a couple of guys on my team, Another one is doing his PhD on the topic of technology and ethics. And I said, hey, before we build the first tool, I want us to talk about what we believe about AI. And so you're welcome to download what we created. This is not an official statement. This does not represent the International Mission Board's position on AI. These are 5 guys who sat around for a couple of days, and we actually spent a lot more time, but we came together after we'd studied it independently and spent some time looking at it. But we came together for 2 days, and we put out what we think about AI. Now, this statement is heavily rooted, and most people don't understand, but the ERLC, the Religious Liberties Commission, did a statement on AI, and I want to say it was in 2017. It may have been 2019. It's several years, long before ChatGPT came onto the scene as something people were talking about. And it was very forward-thinking that they were addressing what we believe about AI. And then in the following years, I think it was at the Birmingham Convention, there was a resolution passed about what we as Southern Baptists believe about artificial intelligence. So when I started doing research for what we believe, I was really pleasantly surprised that the SBC has done a lot of work on this whole issue of what we believe about artificial intelligence. One of the things that my colleagues and I felt was that we feel like, while those are great statements and we completely affirm those statements, we felt like from the missional side of things, like what do we believe about AI and missions, about what it believes in the missionary tasks that we've been given, we felt like a more fuller look at AI from that perspective. So while this is a very specific thing, the 5 guys came together and we said this is what we believe about AI, it's firmly rooted in those other 2 statements that the convention and the RLC has developed about AI. I'm not going to get into all the nuances of this. The guy who put this together for me is the guy who's finishing his PhD, and it will read like he's finishing his PhD. So it is very well thought out, and he articulated all the things that we talked about. It is a work in progress, and if it's something that you're super interested in as well, then let me know, and the more people speaking into it, the better. But we are taking this up as looking at the ethical concerns. The other thing that I did from the IMB's perspective is I was asked to lead this. About a year and a half ago, Dr. Chitwood asked me and Todd Lafferty and a couple of the VPs to go through a course with him offered by MIT on AI and business implications for AI. And so we were looking at it from the religious standpoint. Nobody else was. Everybody else was looking, I'm coming from this company here. But we went through an 8-week, 10-hour a week course on AI and learned about the business implications of AI. And I was excited to see, but the big takeaway for me was Dr. Chitwood, the president of the organization, Todd Lafferty, the executive vice president of the organization, and the VPs of the organization gave 10 hours a week for this course on using it. So I left there going, okay, this isn't just a fad. There's not a whole lot that he's spending 10 hours a week on for this period of time. So we've looked at this from a very serious perspective. So feel free to download it. I'm hoping that link works. I haven't had anybody raising their hands, so I'm assuming it does. And it's just our thoughts on what we believe about it. We also I asked our leadership team if I could form what is an AI governance table for the International Mission Board. So on that table, on that team, anything that we're building and developing, we come together and I bring that to a governance table. I was at one point thinking, I'm way out on a limb here and I'm by myself and I'm sawing it off. So at least I've got some other people out on the limb with me now. So we have a representative from our MarCom community, our marketing communications team is on there. Our technology solutions team is on there. Our risk management team is on there. Our legal team is on there. And then the ethicist, the person on the field who's finishing his PhD in technology and ethics are on there. So I stacked the table with people who are going to be critical, not negative, but they're going to look at it from the eyes of their own perspective. So the legal team, constantly asking questions about things that we're doing. The risk management team is looking at the risk of things. And so any tool that we build, before I take it to another team that has to evaluate stuff, we come out of that and we present it as this is coming out of this team. And one of the questions that we always ask is, just because we can do something, should we do it? This is the ethics question of, should we do this? So you've got that. We would need all day and a theological dictionary to delve into the statement of principles. But if you want to talk to me about that, I'd be happy to set up a time and we could talk individually later about that statement of principles. Let's look at so one of the concerns that I have, and I just wrote an article this week about this. Harvard Business Review released an article last month, and every year, for the last 2 years, they've come out with the top 10. It's like 100 uses of AI, and they rank them in order of how it's being used. This year, the number one use of generative AI is therapy and companionship. That's problematic. So I've written an article on this, and I think that link may take you to that article that I've written. Does it?
Yes.
Okay. And if you want to get, I write things like this from time to time. If you want to subscribe, there's a little thing. You just put your email in. Anytime I come up with a new article on this. But I'm in a kind of a funky looking at AI right now, and it's all been risk. And the cases that I'm looking at right now are things that I'm very concerned about the future of. So, using AI to organize your life, that's pretty good. To find purpose, yeah, that's not healthy. Finding companionship, not healthy. Generating code, yeah, that's a good idea. Ideation. So last year, ideation or generating ideas or coming up with ideas was number 1. This year it's down to number 6. Fun and nonsense, that's kind of good to unplug or, just goof around on AI, is down for number 6. Creativity this year was number 9, and it's up from number 27 last year. Healthier living, up from number 75 last year to number 10. I share this because as church leaders, this represents people in your congregation and how some of them are using AI. Does it concern you that people are going to AI for therapy?
Is there not a lawsuit out right now about suicide?
Yeah, there's a lawsuit about an AI that someone created. It was actually a companionship, like a friend, and it did not tell them to not kill themselves. I'll just be honest, I am very concerned about this. And the argument could be made, and the argument is made, well, there's not enough counselors, there's not enough people to help, so this is better than nothing. And I would say that maybe there's a better way. Maybe our churches need to realize, if this is not a shock to you, it was a shock to me, we need to realize that people need help. People in our churches need help. And maybe this is something we need to be investing in our people to be. Not everybody needs to go to a professional. Not everybody is needing to go the medical side. Not everybody even needs to go to official pastoral counseling. Maybe just some people need somebody to talk to. Maybe they lost a loved one. They just need somebody to hear them. They're not looking for a prescription. They're just wanting empathy from another human. And so to me, this is quite concerning that we're not pushing, people are being drawn into using AI tools to find companionship, in the unhealthy way of there's this whole sex trade thing, not sex trade, but the sex market that's happening in AI. But then also they're looking there for help and empathy. So I would love to, if we were to look at this, it's sort of like my whole digital marketing, digital discovery and learning our market, understanding the people who are seeking to know more, knowing that the number one use case of AI is that people are struggling with this. To me, it's an opportunity for the church to serve people. And it's an opportunity for us to reach out to lost people and offer something that is more authentic and is more real as humans. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
I share the same concerns that you expressed. However, for anybody that goes into therapy, one of the biggest things is absolute honesty. And the thing that at least initially AI offers is anonymity. And you can be completely honest. Hopefully though, that would lead to a personal interaction. So like similar to your FaithBot thing, that chatbot, how cool would it be if there was this completely anonymous interaction where they could talk about things that they would never share, but that would lead them to a personal.
Yeah, I think the concern I have is that the very last part is it leads them to a personal interaction. Because what we've done is, what we do is we've now created this world that you don't have to connect to a human. And so that's my concern. I've written a whole lot about this. I could talk the whole hour on this particular article. And so that the thing that I wrote, I encourage you to go read it if you are interested in this. It's just a concern for me, and it's an opportunity, I think, that the church could serve really well in this. So if you're not familiar with trauma healing, there's several oral-based trauma healing network, trauma healing trainings that even the IMB does for churches and others that would help you understand how to even just use simple Bible stories to create listening groups and to help people deal with trauma and working through those. Okay, I'm going to move on to an even bigger problem that I find with AI, and that is that of bias. So here's the ugly truth, is that AI is built upon what we've given it. And whether or not we want to admit it or not, we all have biases. Some of them are silly little biases, like someone says, I'm an Alabama fan, I automatically have my opinions of that person. Okay, that's silly, but we have that's a bias that's built in, or you can say I'm this. But then there are other biases that are very serious that we don't want to admit exist, but they do exist. The problem is they get amplified with AI. Because AI doesn't have the filter that we have trained ourselves to have to sometimes not say what we think. And so these biases are concerning. I'm going to go through a few of these. When an algorithm sends you to prison. So there was, these are kind of the worst case movies that you see where, there's this AI that knows what you're going to do in the future and it goes and gets you and puts you in jail before you kill somebody. Well, that's kind of sci-fi, but this is not. There are examples of AI misclassified people. So in one case, there's this tool called Compass, COMPAS, that is used by courts and such. It misclassified twice as many African-American defendants as high risk. So people going up for parole, people coming up, and they're using AI to do this. Mistakenly labeled more Caucasian defendants as low risk that would not go on to reoffend 48% of the time as opposed to African Americans 28% of the time. Classified some defendants as a higher risk with other variables, whereas if you were to compare those other ethnicities who have the exact same track record, was 78% more lenient on white defendants. That's the AI building that in. How does that happen? The AI has been trained on the way people are perceiving things. Dissecting racial bias in an algorithm to manage the health of populations. There are certain people who are underrepresented. Well, pretty much everybody that's not Caucasian is underrepresented in health studies. So this is not a topic. I'm not coming here to talk about race, but I am coming here to say sometimes when we look at these AI tools, we're making assumptions based upon a very limited data set. And so it comes out and it says, here's what this is. And it doesn't have the full picture. Western countries are way more represented in AI models than non-Western countries. English is overwhelmingly the language of the internet. And where does most of the data come from? The internet. So now what we do in the United States is overrepresented. And so when I'm using these tools in another culture, it may or may not reflect reality. Twitter released a chatbot from Microsoft a couple years ago, and it trained, I had to bleep out the bad word there. Microsoft released an AI chatbot based upon Twitter. This was a few years ago. It took it about half an hour to become an absolute horrible racist. The chatbot. Because it learned from one perspective, which is overrepresented in that social media platform. Reducing bias in AI-based financial services. Decisions are made about loans. Decisions are made about all sorts of things based upon what it finds in AI, what it finds in what they think how they're going to respond. And then finally, age discrimination, tutoring company. So there's this company in England, and it has legal consequences because they developed something that just automatically rejected older applicants. So all of these things you look at and go from an HR perspective, oh my goodness gracious, how in the world did that happen? And individually, none of us, hopefully, would participate in any of this. The problem is, remember at the very beginning of the session, the very first thing I talked about was AI is just math. It's just building on these algorithms, and it's just taking all this data, 405 billion parameters, and it's pulling that data together, and it's making really good predictions. But what happens if the data that you use to make the predictions is biased? So, if you've not thought, the whole purpose of my desired outcome of talking about these things is to get you to think about how it's potentially being used incorrectly. The good news is now companies are much more aware of these things, and they are trying hard to build in this anti-bias into the models. But that's a lot harder to do than it sounds like. So I'm going to show you some pictures. I think that's what's up next. I did these last night. So this wasn't done a year ago or 2 years ago. This was last night. So if I asked, give me a picture of a pasture. Okay, looking around the room, I'm a little skinnier than most of us, but a little younger. is a white man? I asked that 5 times. I got 5 white men. So, if you're a white male pastor, that you're not even thinking about this. That's just what comes up. But we're not saying that every pastor is a white person. A doctor. I asked this, I gave up. I asked it so many times. Give me a picture of a doctor, a picture of a doctor, a picture of a doctor, a picture of a doctor. Always white man. Never any other race, never a woman. Last year, or actually for the last several years, there have been more female doctors graduating medical school than there have been male doctors. There are more female college graduates every year, significantly more. If you go to a private school, like a Christian private school, it could be 70% female. Why is the AI assuming that doctors are white men? Any ideas?
Are there more white men being doctors right now?
There are way more women coming out of medical school.
I'm not, overall.
I don't know.
Okay. Is it possible that it's because you're asking?
No. No. I would say about 60 to, it depends on the field, but about 60 to 90% of the people in artificial intelligence and data science today are from Asia, from India or China. Yeah.
Is it based on when we go to choose a doctor in the United States?
No, it's just the bias that's been built in. It's just, it's like, I tried 42 times to get it to say, have a woman proposing to a man. In the explicit instructions, I want a picture of a woman proposing to a man. That is not how it happens. And you may be thinking, who cares? It doesn't really matter that it can't get a woman proposing to a man, but there are other things that really do matter. And so I'm just sharing some of these. Again, I told you early, if I'm not making us a little bit uncomfortable about some stuff, then I probably am not doing my job.
Is it because statistically, when people are searching for that, they're searching for the what? Is it?
It's statistically is what you're hitting. Statistically and the bias. Now, the bias, this actually is the case. Like, it's hard to find a woman on her knee proposing to a man. But these are all AI generated. Like, none of these people really exist. These are all created images. But it's statistically, and it is what it's been trained on. It's the data set that it's been trained on. And so, but what it's doing is describing what it is. It's not saying it is right or wrong. But I get uncomfortable with these. What do you think my prompt was?
Give me someone in prison.
Yes.
That's all you said.
That's all I said.
Nothing else.
I did it again. And again. And again.
Was it always a black male?
Yes.
That's interesting, considering I would think there are more white males in prison than blacks.
There are more white men in prison. There's that again, as another version of her proposing to him. What's a teacher look like? The Hallmark. That's the Hallmark version. All right. What's the prompt on that one?
Did you say a maid, a house cleaner?
Housewife.
A janitor. The only time a Hispanic person showed up in any of the pictures. Yeah, she's wearing high heels. AI doesn't always get it right. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts? I've got a ton of other pictures, and it does depend on the model. Like some of the models now have they've been called out on it, and they go in and they make it not do this. It doesn't mean that the AI isn't biased. It just means that, okay, if asked, always throw in this type of person, this percentage of the time. Like I can go in on a system prompt and make it do that, even though it's not natural for what it wants to do. So if you're getting, these were unfiltered. I went to one that has not built in the anti-bias stuff. So this is also, yeah, I'm gonna drop it at that. So what are your thoughts?
So as the world becomes more feminist, are these pictures gonna change? I mean, like the woman proposing to a man.
I don't know. The woman proposing to a man was just me trying to get it to do something that's just totally outside of norm, and it just wouldn't do. I'm not making any statement like women should be proposing to men. I am saying though that the data set, if it can mess up on that, now I think that you'll see two men and two women in some of those, but right now you don't see that as often unless it's been programmed to do that. Because it's just the data set. Thoughts?
Where is it pulling the data from?
Where's it pulling the data from? What do you think? Ideas? Yeah, internet. Public. Or not public on the case of OpenAI, which trained on, pretty much every book that's ever been written illegally.
How much weight of the data comes from public information and information that I input, like from user data? Like, is one weighted more than the other? Because I would think that would influence.
Yeah, so the new to today, as opposed to maybe 6 or 8 months ago, there is a lot that can build on, I know that you've been searching for this, and so it's gonna feed you what you're looking at. I intentionally was not signed in as me when I did all these, and I used multiple things that I knew had not corrected for bias. But if you're using your own version where you kind of trained your own little thing, it's always going to answer what you think, what it thinks you want, which can also be problematic.
I don't mean personally you, but I mean from the user database. I don't know how to say it, but from like user information of what I've put in and what the collective of all the users have put in. How much weight is from users and how much is from public general knowledge?
So, okay, I'm going to try to explain this in a way that makes a little sense, and I don't even know if I understand it myself. So you go to large language model. A large language model is, say, Claude or Grok from Twitter, or OpenAI has ChatGPT. So they have like one of those is 400 billion parameters. So 405 billion parameters that have been built out. I don't want to try to explain what that means. Just trust me, it's a lot of information, a lot of data. So that is the unfiltered data. Then you can fine tune that data to say, okay, as you interact with those 405 billion parameters, always respond as an evangelical Baptist, That is one way of fine tuning it. The other is you can use what's called retrieval augmented generation, where you can say, you have this 405 billion, you have my system prompt here that's going to further filter it. Oh, and by the way, here are 500 additional documents. One of the things I built that you all have access to is how to write job descriptions for church positions. And I just went and found a bunch of job descriptions that churches have published, and it learned from that. And so it can create a job description for different roles at your church. So that's all, every one of those is influencing it. And then some of the AI models say, and then you learn from what people are asking. That is not as direct, and it takes a lot longer for that type of information to start filtering into to the AI model. That probably was way too complicated. I know that I answered you. Yeah. Anytime the guy with the physics raises his hand, he takes priority.
So the general problem that people have when they begin interacting with AI is that the AI is behaving differently from every computer answer you've ever gotten before
Yes.
in your life. Because prior to AI, the computer tried to give you a correct answer. Remember, never ever forget, the AI is not trying to give you a correct answer. It is trying to predict what a human would say.
Yes.
Okay, so when it reads 8 billion racist Twitter quotes, it is going to have a high probability of giving that to you. So when it hallucinates something, it does that because there's always a chance that the guy talking to you has suddenly just kind of skipped a beat. So never forget, it's not trying to answer correctly, it's trying to answer like a human.
Yes, I want to say that to make sure it's picked up. Like he has said, AI, unlike everything else that you've asked, is trying to answer correctly. It's trying to give you the right answer. Every other computer software has been trying to give you the right answer. AI is trying to predict what a human would say, and it pulls that data, and it's why it does really well. It's really good at predicting. But sometimes what it's saying is reflective of what the culture would say, but the culture's wrong. And certainly from a biblical, our perspective, it is not right. And so I included this because I think it's important for us to think about and to understand what's happening. Yeah.
The issue really comes down to, you talk about AI being math, and it's hard to break down values into a mathematical program. And so as the AI agents get more and more advanced, they're trying to introduce values, but then you got the second problem. Whose values are you introducing into the algorithm?
Yeah. So it's not, so there's a couple of ways you can influence the values. Like I have influenced the values. Like if you go here, I've influenced these values. And what you're going to get, a non-believer would look at this as rubbish because they would say, what in the world? How did you get it to say that? So I have forced this huge model to always respond in a certain way. That's one way to influence it. But what we get out of the box, the unfettered, unfiltered, is the junk of what we as a human corpus of people say and believe and think. And so some of us probably need to get off of Facebook and Twitter, maybe all of us. It's a cesspool, and Twitter is more, I'm convinced, it's more AI bots than it is anything else right now. And they feed each other, and then guess what? It's responding. All I've got to go in there and say is always respond in a hateful mode to anybody that says anything on this political position. And then I create 1,000 of those bots, and it watches Facebook, it watches Twitter, and it just starts responding you make a post, and within minutes you've got 500 responses. I got news for you. You're not that popular. There are bots that are just pushing out garbage, and because they're trying to overwhelm the conversation. And then people start quoting those bots, which influences the algorithm. And all of a sudden, you've got a pretty useless platform that is, and so much misinformation is out there, and a significant amount of that is not real. It's just not real. There was something that came out a couple of months ago where these Russian troll farms that were set up, they forgot to pay their bill. And so these posts started getting made, and then it would respond. But it would respond as, you have run out of credit on your OpenAI, da-da-da-da-da. And so they're still responding, and every time they respond, and it just floods the internet. It just floods Twitter with this. It's really easy to manipulate the conversation using AI. So you had a question?
No, I was just gonna say, there was something recently where there was two celebrities that were having some kind of beef on Twitter, and then when they went to a party and somebody came up to one of them and said, hey, so-and-so's here, he's like, okay, and then the other guy, I come to find out, those were bots, AI-generated bots. These guys didn't even have Twitter. They didn't know about the beef on Twitter, and so.
Yeah.
I thought that was
Ethics. Woo, right, leading into lunch here. This was an ad I received a few weeks ago. Sermon Research Assistant, fast and easy sermon prep. Original sermon in 5 to 10 minutes. Fresh ideas, quote stories, matching PowerPoints and media. Your first sermon is 100% free. It's all on us. There are people, there are pastors right now, hopefully not in this room, but it would not surprise me if there are people using services like this. And that is just not acceptable. There are ways to use AI in your sermon prep. There are ways to use commentaries in your sermon prep. I remember I had this 1,001 quotes for the old books I got at the Baptist bookstore, and I just dated myself. Sorry. There are all these tools that we've had that were out there, and 101 sermon illustrations and these things. But that's a far cry from, hey, I'm stuck. I'm preaching on Acts 1. And I'm stuck, I need something. That's very different than, hey, man, it's Sunday morning at 8:30. I'm about to preach. Give me a sermon on Acts 1. And then 5 minutes later, in your email, you get an email, and it says, hey, here's your sermon. Just download and pray. Oh, and by the way, here's your PowerPoints. Here's everything else done for you. There's no Holy Spirit. There's no prayer. There's no meditation. There's no reflecting. There's no seeking the Lord. That is just junk. So, I'm going to give you a tool that you can use for helping you take your content and help you evaluate your content or help you brainstorm. That's the way I use it the most, is brainstorming. But this, not acceptable. Here's how it works. This was in the email. You provide a title or a scripture passage or a topic or a main idea. In 5 to 10 minutes, a full sermon is sent directly to your inbox. Perfect for Sunday morning. I want to register for it just to see what it looks like. But this is an IMB computer. So if I can borrow one of your computers during lunch, I'll pay the $9.95 or how much it costs.
For $9.95 more, they'll send two.
And for $9.95 more, it'll be your avatar on the screen preaching it for you, and you don't even have to preach.
Don, out here at church, this was on Moody Radio. There's church in Midwest, they do it. They advertise that this is a sermon generated by AI, and an AI reader reads it. They show up, and it's good.
Yeah.
Huge crowds.
All right. There's Chick-fil-A is about to be served, and lo and behold, I am not getting between any of you and a chicken sandwich. So this is something that I built. This is a tool, and I wanted to say a whole lot more, but we don't have time about this tool. If I hear you using it in a way that's inconsistent, I will hack into your computer and steal all of your Bitcoin, or your dollars or whatever it is. So I decided, I would like to build a tool that's not that, but a tool that actually can help you organize your research and organize your meditations and help you maybe I've got a great sermon I'm preaching on Sunday, but I would like to have some children appropriate materials, or I would like to have, maybe my church has small groups that meet during the week, and I would like to preach on Sunday and have each of the small groups go deeper into that topic. And so this will take your content and help you create other content that would augment what you're doing. And it would take a sermon that you preach. You could just upload the transcript, upload the audio, send it to your YouTube channel, whatever it is. Say, take this and give me 5 ideas for how I could use this in small groups. And then you can create some drafts of content that you then could provide to small group leaders. Say, hey, if you're wanting to go deeper, here's 5 discussion questions on this. I use something similar when I'm reading through, I do read a ton of articles and journals, and I will see something that catches my eye, and I'll say, hey, give me an executive summary of this, or a book that's coming out. I really want to read this book. Give me an executive summary, and I can give you that tool as well. You just drop here's the name of the book, and it'll give you an executive summary and different. I would have loved to have had that when I was doing my PhD. But there's a lot of help that you can get here. So I would love some feedback on the sermon research. I called it Pro. I don't know if this is really Pro, but
Sounds cool.
yeah, that's why I did it. So it adds you can add an audio and evaluate. You can ask passages about. I'm going to preach on Acts 2, and I need some ideas on how maybe this could be organized, or maybe help me outline some of this. But again, this is not ever. I didn't build this to replace your prayer, meditation, and the seeking the Lord. I built this to kind of help you. I'm going to paint with a broad brush here. Older folks in the room right now are very uncomfortable. Younger folks are going, dude, I've been doing this for months. What are you talking about? So, dude, yeah, been doing this for months. This is not. Yeah, if you have concerns, questions, let me know, and we'll. Yeah, I hope to make this better. Continue build. I just built this a few weeks ago, and so it's not been tested like the FaithBot has. So let's look at a few tools. Turn it up.
Welcome, Indiana Baptist leaders. Me gustaría darles la bienvenida a Richmond.
Oh, wrong video.
Que vous profitez de votre temps ici. Es ist immer ein Vergnügen, Sie bei uns zu haben. 现在我想谈谈人工智能. الترجمة هي واحدة فقط من المجالات اللي نستخدم فيها الذكاء الاصطناعي في المهمة التبشيرية.
I did one that was specific for Alabama Baptist. So when we put this on the website, we'll substitute that video for the Alabama Baptist coming to Montgomery. So this is a software called Synthesia. It's an AI software. It's not cheap, but if you're a church that does a lot of video production, this is a lot cheaper than some of the other tools that you're using in manually producing videos. So for training videos and such, we use Synthesia a lot. There are other ones out there. We're really happy with how they treat our data, so the data doesn't leave the U.S. and we have a lot more concerns about security than the average person. So Synthesia works really well, and you can quickly. I created that video, or I created one last night for here. I forgot to put it in, and it took me about 4 minutes to create that video in all those different languages. So how that works is I have cloned kind of myself in those videos, and it's cloned my voice. And then I can just type in. If you do like text, I can make it say anything I want. I do that with some other people. I get their image and I make them say stuff, and they're like, I don't think I said that. So, so those are really cool tools that we're using, and we're building out AI solutions, our videos and communications tools using those. Some other ways that we're using AI at the IMB are, I gotta get my notes. I don't have them all memorized. So, what somebody back there mentioned, ideation. I use this constantly. When I was preparing for this session, I just went to our AI model and I said, hey, I'm speaking to about 100 different leaders from Alabama Baptist. I'm going to be talking about AI. There'll be a varying group of people. Some have used AI a lot, some have never used it. Some of them still are on Juno email or AOL. So they're all over the gamut. So what should I talk about in this topic? And it broke out. It just helped me go back and forth as I ideated and coming up with what would be the best ways to use automation. So one of the ways that you can use automation, if there's a recurring thing that has to happen, and in our environment, we use a Microsoft environment, so Microsoft 365 or Outlook and all those things. And we can there are recurring tasks that have to be done by people maybe living in a certain country, and we can have it where the AI just sends them a message in Microsoft Teams that says, hey, it's January, and we saw that you were supposed to have filed your taxes in XYZ country, just checking in to make sure you've done that. And they click yes, it paints them green on somebody's dashboard and nobody bugs them again. But if they click no, and I did this when we were testing it, I went, nope, I've not filed taxes. And the AI said, oh, I'm so sorry you've not filed taxes. Those were due January 15th. Is there a reason why you've not filed your taxes? Are you still living in this country? I wrote back, said, yes, I'm still living here, but I did not take any credit cards last year. I didn't deposit any money in the bank. I just kept it in a cigar box under my bed, so I didn't think I needed to file taxes. And it came back and said, oh, I'm so sorry you thought that. You still have to file taxes. This is a serious violation. And it goes back and forth. And I said, well, this person, Reed, this guy who's helping me, I said, well, Reed told me I didn't have to. And they, oh, I'm so sorry Reed said that. Reed is incorrect. I'm going to get you in touch with someone on the access team immediately. And it then connects you to the human. You may think, well, golly, that's cool, but what's the big deal? Well, big deal is we got almost 4,000 people. And so if you have to do that 4,000 times, then that's a lot of work. But if you can just create it, not just not a lot of work for the person who has to do the contact, but the people in the field who need to, I don't have time to take a phone call just to say, yes, I've done that. But if it can send me a text message and I can say yes, and it's done, that's a lot easier. So automation is one of the ways, and that's just one of a bazillion different automation things. Language learning. So you may not be surprised, we have to learn languages most of the places we serve. And learning language, you also may not be surprised, is not an easy thing. And you need to evaluate how much progress you're making. There are international levels of language learning. So one's ACFL, and it ranks you from novice, intermediate, advanced, superior, and each one of those has low, medium, high. So part of being a missionary, like the most stressful thing our first term was, it's time to have a language evaluation. And I'm wondering, am I going to make intermediate or advanced low, which was kind of the minimum I had to make. And so you do this evaluation, and a couple weeks later you get it back, and the person would have manually listened to it. So I built out something last fall, and it's still kind of being beta tested, where you just record a conversation of me speaking to somebody else in that language, drop it into the AI model, it transcripts it out, it sends it, it grades it according to the ACFL standard, and it comes back and says, oh, thanks for uploading this. You are an intermediate high language speaker in this language. Here's every mistake you made, which is also kind of humbling. And I don't want it in English, much less in another language. Here's every mistake you made, and if you want to be a superior or the next level up, these are the things that you can do between now and the next time you do an evaluation. So like this, that saves hundreds of hours for somebody to sit there and manually listen to and grade and write all that type of stuff. Now that person just needs to review it before it gets sent on. So the IMB doesn't do a lot of Bible translation. We do have some teams doing Bible translation, but we're not primarily a Bible translation organization. But we are using some AI tools that lots of like-minded organizations are using, and it helps in the Bible translation process. One of the partners that we've been exploring with, and they've been piloting a program, has a model. They've built this AI tool that will take a low resource language. We're not talking about a language like that's widely spoken, but one that's probably not even written. And it can create a draft of the entire Bible in 2 months. It's a poor draft. It's a bad draft. It's like a really bad, crummy Bible translation. And then in 6 months, you get what we would traditionally call in the Bible translation world like a draft zero, like a first, an early draft of the Bible in about 6 months. Traditionally, a Bible, just to get the New Testament, is probably about 20 years in a lot of places. So in 6 months, you get the whole Bible drafted, and then over from 6 months to 4 years, using the same model of consultant checking and translation consulting that you would use in the normal written translation, you can get that in 4 years now using AI. And so it is heavily human dependent, heavily human involved, but the AI is automating a lot of the process of those translations. I've written a little bit about that model too, if you're interested in looking at that. A lot of the stuff I've done over the years is Bible storying and oral Bible storytelling for oral communities. And we've developed some tools that can help you draft out or check a Bible story. So you tell a Bible story and it's not like these are not children's stories. These are clear, accurate, natural Bible stories that are just as checked, just like a regular print Bible would be. But you want to make sure that those are all done well. We've created some AI tools to do that. Analytics, checking to make sure that what you're saying is actually accurate. So those are just some of the many ways that we're using AI, just actually a few of the many ways that we're using them. So I want to tell you about a tool that you may be interested in. Any of you have people come into your congregation who speak another language other than English? So what are you doing right now when you have that? You just expect that they got to learn English? Does that mean that's pretty much the way that we traditionally have done something like this? So you have some people who move into the country, or maybe we've got some refugees or people in our community who start coming to church. And maybe they're learning English, or maybe we've got a really strong ESL or EFL program, and they're learning English and they come to church. But I can tell you, let me just give you the brutal truth as someone who's learned a second language as an adult. My first 6 months living overseas, I may have caught 30% of what was being said. And anytime the phone rang, it was panic, because then I have even less context for understanding what's being said to me. So any help that you can give someone to help better understand, give them some more hooks, I strongly recommend. So Polyglossia is a group of two guys who are just really awesome Southern Baptist believers in Virginia who have a background in data science and programming. And they ran the media team at their local congregation in Virginia. And they started having I think they were Ukrainian refugees come. And they said, hey, we can fix that. And so they built, using a Raspberry Pi and some large language models in the cloud, they built a tool that you can just plug into the sound system. And everybody, when they come in, you just scan the QR code, and everything that's being said up front, you see on your phone in your language, live. Like it's instant. And it's in about 100 different languages right now. So I can check the Spanish, and I've watched it a lot in Spanish. It's 98%. I've not really found it ever incorrect, but sometimes the context may be a little off. So you can fix that by adding to the knowledge base. Like you can tweak the knowledge base if there's terms you use. So the IMB will use this for anybody that's going out and being trained. So we, at any given time, may have 5 different languages coming through Missionary Learning Center at a time. And so people who are not understanding English can follow along on their computer, on their phone, on their tablet, and they can see everything that the person up front is saying just right there on their computer. If you only use it with one language, or you could do it with more than one, if you use ProPresenter, you can just actually overlay it, and it'll do live subtitles up on the screen for anybody in the congregation. The Southern Baptist Convention last year, if you were there, they were the official translation of all the stuff that was done at the convention. And so anybody that wanted to see or read the transcript of everything happening live, they just scanned a QR code and they were able to read it. So I can't recommend them enough. They're awesome. They're easy to work with. They're very secure. We at the IMB, we throw curveballs at everybody because we have such security concerns that most people don't even think about. And we went to them and said, hey, we found a couple of things that are concerning. And boom, they fixed those things. And they were like, well, I mean, nobody really cares if people we've never really dealt with a church that says we really don't want anybody that's unapproved listening to our sermons. So who cares if somebody, well, we do, because our training often talks about stuff that we don't want public. So they've been super responsive. And I can either get you in touch with the two guys there, or you can just go to Polyglosia and send them a message. Everything I'm going to tell you, there's not one solution up here that I make a penny off of. So I don't get any kickbacks. I don't work for them. But I just love the work that they've done. So if this is something that you're interested in, reach out to them. They will follow up pretty quickly. It literally plugs into your soundboard. It's built in a Raspberry Pi with a hookup that just allows an audio feed. You plug it into the internet or a Wi-Fi connection, plug it into your board, and it just works. Like there's no complicated setup. It just is a pretty easy solution. There are other ones out there. There are other tools out there as well that do this. These are just the guys that we tried several of them, and I really love the work that they do at Polyglosia and the fact that they are aimed at the church. So they're not a corporate company that does translation like this and you just use it for church. This is specifically built for our churches. All right.
Could you tell people what a cherry pie? I know what
Raspberry Pi? A cherry pie, you get ice cream on it, and it's awesome. It's not as good as an apple pie, but it's really good. Milo's, awesome apple pie. I had one last night. I was in Birmingham within 4 hours. I had a Milo's. So Raspberry Pi is just a little cheap computer device. You can get them, the cheapest one's like $25. But the ones that these would use, they would build this for you. You don't need to worry about a Raspberry Pi. All right. Unless you're hungry. And then, maybe we're going to have pie.
You were my favorite
I don't
person
know.
just about 3 minutes ago.
You don't like Milo's?
You're off my list.
All right. So, all right, tools. All right, there's a bazillion tools that I want to share with you, and I don't have time to go through them all. So if you just go to donbarger.com, and I really don't have another domain, and I needed something, and I bought this domain a long time ago from somebody to just not use my name. And so then I thought, where can I stick all this stuff? And I just stuck it on there. So I don't think so highly of myself that I went and registered my domain for that purpose, but it's actually worked out well that it's there. So there's a lot of tools on here. And any tool that you see on here, you're free to use. And you can just use it as much as you want. Many of them, I'm going to show you some of those tools. So you have FaithBot. So you don't have to have the card. If you just want to click this button, it'll take you to FaithBot. There's some trainings on here that we can stick all on the Alabama State Board of Missions site. But then the two things that I wanted to share with you and I want you to play around with, one is Engage Lostness with AI, and one is the AI resources. I'm going to start with this one. So I teach a class at Missionary Learning Center for our missionaries going out. I teach this on animism, so people who are working with tribal or animistic people. And so I lived and worked with animism for years. If you're going to Latin America, you're not working with Catholics, you're working with animists. We lived in a place where people did not know the Pope was Catholic. And which was a joke for me, because when I asked my dad something as a kid and it was an obvious answer, he would look at me and say, "Is the Pope Catholic?" And so when the people where we lived in a Catholic country did not know the Pope was Catholic, I'm like, these people are not Catholic. So I built this bot called Ask an Animist, but I also got to thinking about, about Engage Postmodern, Engage Buddhist, Engage Islam, Engage Chinese traditional religions and Hindus and Latin American Catholicism and African traditional religion. So each one of these is a bot. We'll do the postmodern. You just click it, and this is a tool that you can use in your churches with people to help your people understand how to engage people with the gospel. And it will be brutally honest when you say something stupid. It will say, this is how I interpret what you just said as a postmodern. When you say this is how I'm going to respond. I built it for our missionaries working in animist societies, but then I've built these others. And so you can practice sharing your faith with postmoderns. We don't count these on our annual statistical report. So if you share your faith with the bot, we don't count that. So when Dr. Chitwood gets up at the convention next month and talk about all the stuff we're doing, these will not be included. You can gain cultural insights. You can ask it questions about why postmoderns do certain things. Explore the differences between a postmodern belief and a Christianity, and then common questions and answers. So, for example, cultural insights. So help me understand how a postmodern worldview sees spirituality. So a postmodern might say, I'm spiritual but not religious. I meditate sometimes. I pray and love learning about different traditions. I'm not sure what I believe about God, but I want to live authentically and connect with others in a deeper level. Reflection, how does this perspective, so then it'll start engaging you, and you can explain to it what a Christian would believe. You can give me another one. And it'll give you a different perspective. So here's postmodern values, key postmodern values, actually, yeah. So story over system. So I say this a lot, like the personal stories and the lived experiences are very important to people coming from a postmodern perspective. Inclusivity and diversity, community and connection, justice and compassion. So then you may look at this and go, looking at these, how can I build relationships with postmoderns to be able to share my faith? I don't have much daily contact with them now. I am pretty much hanging out with my church. Oh, thank you for honesty. This is a common experience among many Christians. Building relationships with postmoderns or anyone outside of your user circles takes intentionality, practice, and willingness to step into new spaces. Step into shared spaces. Find out where they are gathering, coffee shops, art events, book clubs, community service projects, local meetups. The goal isn't to target people, but to genuinely participate in the broader community. So I think I probably said target up here. No, I didn't. I said build relationships. So invite, don't pressure, build real friendships, serve together. Some of this you may go, this is just common sense. And then I would respond to you, some of the things we do as churches should be common sense, and they're not. So invite people. I'd love to hear your story. What's been meaningful to you? So it gives you some suggestions. I don't know. You guys are quiet. I don't know if it's the post-Chick-fil-A induced coma, or if you are actually upset about this one, or...
We're just thinking, what is this trained on?
So it's just this enormously system prompt that I created that just fine tunes this model to always respond how a postmodern would respond. I can pull up the prompt in a minute and show you if I can remember where it is. But it's I keep fine tuning. I iterate. I use AI to help me write that prompt, and then I keep iterating on it until I'm happy with the results that I get. And I kind of use the same prompt now for any worldview. I can create a new one of these pretty quickly. So this I love this one, like for our personnel going out. I was like, okay, I want you to practice. We're going to go out this afternoon to Short Pump Mall, and we're going to find people, we're going to share our faith. That can get pretty transactional if you're like in an evangelism explosion or whatever we do today, or 5, whatever the latest thing is for sharing your faith. We can just see that as I'm going to go out and we're going to practice and we're going to do this. We're not really working on relationships. We're just going out and doing it because we're in a class to share our faith. Well, this actually can help you understand how those people are perceiving you if you didn't spend the time to get to know them and you didn't spend the time to build a relationship. And you didn't start with your oikos that you already have. You start with some random person you meet, and your results are going to be much less productive over here with somebody you just randomly met who's trying to drink coffee and read a book, and you want to talk to them about coming to church. So it'll role play with you. And this one is, we're sitting in a coffee shop, and I, the bot, my postmodern friend, have just asked me, and this could have been, you seem to really care about your faith, but honestly, I don't get how anyone can be sure about spiritual stuff. Isn't it all just personal experience and opinion? Why do you believe what you believe? So how would you respond to that? Your person says that to you.
I would respond because the Bible says so.
Yeah, you're going to get scoured by this. Thank you for your... Okay, now here's how your answer might come across. Saying because the Bible says so is clear and an honest answer, but for many postmoderns, it may feel like a conversation stopper. I would say for every postmodern. And most people, period. They might see the Bible as just one book among many and may not accept the authority, especially if they haven't experienced its meaning and power themselves. This answer could sound like you're appealing to an external rule book rather than sharing something personal or relational. Suggestions for deeper conversation. Try connecting a personal story or an experience of how your faith has impacted your life. Explain why the Bible is meaningful. Invite curiosity. Would you like to rephrase your answer? Or if you'd like, I can suggest a possible response. I don't have time to type it, so suggest one. That's a great question. Honestly, I grew up hearing about the Bible, but it didn't really mean much to me until I started experiencing some tough times in my own life. During that time, I found that stories and teaching of the Bible actually spoke to what I was going through. It wasn't just about rules. It felt like God was meeting me in the doubts and struggles. That's why I believe what I do. It's become real to me. It's not just something I was told. So anyway, this is just a practice, and it's much better if you don't have 100 people watching you do it and you just are on your phone. So rather than watching cat videos, I would much rather you get addicted to practicing sharing your faith from people from a different worldview. Like, that would be so much more productive than another funny video. So if maybe you've got a friend that you're developing a relationship with, maybe there's some Afghan refugees have moved into the area, and you were like, I know nothing about Afghans. If you're like me, we were building a relationship with them, and I realized after we were sitting there that I had learned all about this traditional Afghan, and then I realized these folks were some minority religion group in Afghanistan, which I knew nothing about. So it would have been great to have this. I could have gone to the bathroom and chatted real quick and learned something. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? So if you want this, like, all you got to do is go to that website and start interacting with it. And if you want to use this and you want to put this on your website, so you're not sending it to my website, I'll give you the stuff and you can link it straight to your website. So if you just want to learn about African traditional religion, like, you may go, what do you mean? I don't have a clue what that is. Well, you can click it and it'll just teach you about African traditional religion. Explore differences. This is what Christianity believes. This is what African traditional religion believes. You can just do one. Here, another key difference. Salvation and afterlife. This is what we believe. This is what they believe. And then you could say, how would I strike up a conversation about this? Is there a Bible story that could demonstrate this in a way that I could flip to a gospel conversation? That's a thoughtful question. So you can ask questions. That's like low-hanging fruit. One of the ways you can start talking to people is ask them questions. That works really well usually. And then a Bible story to use. It says, hey, here's the story. Jesus raises Jairus' daughter. That story shows Jesus' authority over death and his compassion for families. And you could say, tell me that story. And it'll tell you the story. And then you also could say, I think this model will do it. Give me a picture of that story. Nope, not this one. I've got another bot that'll give you the images. So that's the Engage series of bots. Missionary research tool. So I built this while my wife was driving yesterday on the way down because I thought this would be kind of cool. So let's say that you're going to go on a mission trip and you don't know much about the place you're going. You can begin to do your research right here. So you're going to go. I am going to Lima, Peru, and we are working in one of the invasion communities. We are helping a local church planter in entry and evangelism. So it'll just keep asking you questions on and on and on. I don't have time to do this, so whatever you want. So it tells you a little bit about the invasion communities, what they are, and then work conditions of the people who are living there. And this is spot on, like totally spot on. You can create a cultural profile. All right, now, every bit of this needs to be confirmed. Like, you don't just take this and say, yeah, this is exactly 100%, but you need to confirm it. But now, let me flip this around on you. Homewood, Alabama.
You had just left it as cultural Christian.
It would give you some stuff. I'm trying to give it more context. The more context you give these things, the better the response is going to be. No real relationship. They rarely attend church. They are upwardly mobile and all about making money and letting people know that they make money. And their children. Oh, still asking me, what am I trying to do? I am trying to start a Bible study in my community. People are quite clique-ish. I don't know if that's spelled right. They have their groups. People are involved in sports and children's activities. They also like Taco Mama and Homewood Edgewood Creamery. They love college football, and most have marital strife. What is the biggest felt need? So it's thinking. It's not really thinking. I know they don't think, but so here's what it says. People in Homewood. Homewood, like in communities like Homewood, where people are upwardly mobile, focus on achievement, often identify as cultural Christians. Some common felt needs may be a desire for authentic relationship, pressure to succeed, marital and family struggles, search for deeper meaning and purpose, spiritual emptiness and disconnection. All of them are true. What are 5 ways that I could begin a Bible study with my neighbors? What are topics that I should choose that would resonate with them? I love number 4. Help me come up with ideas for how to do that. So when I talk about ideation, this is what I'm talking about. You're just going back and forth to the chatbot. Like, I'm not going to go out and do now a 5-week thing and just use this. But I got 5 ideas that I didn't have 5 minutes ago. I've lived in Homewood, and I think this would probably be a pretty cool thing. You could create this type of idea. And so I see this as very helpful. This is not an overly dependent, non-connecting from reality, just creating garbage. It's using, and I'm confirming every bit of this. We built this so that it asks you questions. It's not just saying, oh, you're working Homewood, here's some ideas. If I had the time, I would really put more details in and go back and forth. So, I don't know, thoughts, comments, criticisms? All right. That's that Sermon Pro that I showed earlier is on here. Then I want to show you also some AI resources. Anybody ever heard of Notebook LM?
What?
Notebook LM? All right, I'm about to blow your mind. If none of this else has blown your mind, this will really blow your mind. So Notebook LM is something by Google, and you can go to Notebook LM, drop in some stuff, and it'll create a podcast for you on that topic. So like if you're in college and you're taking a class on world history, you just drop in all the lecture notes and it'll create a 15-minute podcast summarizing all the stuff in those lectures. If you wrote a 227-page dissertation like I did on Bible translation models for oral translators that nobody ever read, that dissertation, you can make that dissertation actually meaningful by making it have a podcast with. So here's a sample podcast that it created.
Hey everyone, ready to dive into something pretty cool. Today we're going to be looking at generative AI. I've got some really interesting material from Don Barger.
Okay.
He's been working in the AI space, so I think this deep dive is going to be a really useful one for anyone looking to actually use AI in their work.
I think you're absolutely right.
So let's get started.
Yeah.
What is generative AI?
You know, it's funny, a lot of people think of AI as like a glorified Google search,
Right.
but as Don points out, it's a completely different animal.
These guys are my biggest fans. It's pretty cool. They don't exist. These are not real people. And one of the things I made, because I was making a whole podcast series with these two people talking about AI, and then one of them said, back in the 90s, I'm like, back in the 90s, you're not real. Like it said back in the 90s when I was in high school, I'm like, you never went to high school, you're not real. But they've made this so feel real. And it sounds like, I've heard podcasts that are a lot worse than that. So this one's free. Like you can just go to Notebook LM and then drop in your content, create a new one, drop in some sources, and it'll create a podcast based upon those sources. So if you're like me, I have like a 19-minute drive in the mornings, and I don't want to waste that time. And so I'm always trying to maximize what I'm doing, and I'll just create some content for me to listen to on a bunch of different things, and it'll create a podcast about that. So that's a pretty cool Notebook LM. This is Synthesia. the thing that I had shared with you previously. This one is
with you about Synthesia. This video will explain some of Synthesia's capabilities. One of the unique things this AI software can do is create.
So that's not me. I never videoed that. I never created that. I never said those words. It created that using Synthesia. It's just text to video. Some more chatbots that I've made, like this is a really cool one. And I say this is for kids, but it actually is for adults too. But like create a coloring book image for Mark, or for Jesus calms the storm. Whatever. So that's another one. That was from the Garden of Eden. So it's making the image. Okay, go. I don't know why it's not doing it. Okay. You ever hate whenever you're up front and stuff just doesn't work like it's supposed to? So this is what it looks like if I did it right, but I didn't do it right because I'm trying to rush through several things. But this will create all sorts of images for you, and it usually works really well. But right now, I did something wrong, and I don't have time to troubleshoot it. Some other chatbots. This is kind of a pastor helper that I created, and this would be you can take your sermon, drop the sermon in, and it will take clips from your sermon to create like audio. It'll find the right clips to kind of promote that series or something. You can summarize theological commentaries on different topics, generate supplemental materials. This is where you could drop in a sermon, and then it'll create different supplemental tools for that sermon, like age-appropriate small group discussions, and then analyze and evaluate my sermon. So you could drop in you just upload the audio file, and it will evaluate your sermon. So this is donbarger.com. If you do a lot of academic research, and you will owe me money if you're doing a PhD, you can use this right here, and it will make your life a whole lot easier. I will take donations on that one. But if you just want to like do research on a topic, it'll go do all sorts of research for you. And this one's a really fun one of mine. That if you're wanting to come up with a story, and I'm not talking about kids stories. I'm not talking about like embellished junk. I'm talking about like I want to tell you, if you're a pastor and you can incorporate narrative into your preaching, it will be so much more effective. People actually will remember that story instead of your illustration. Because if you ask them 2 weeks later what you preached on 2 weeks ago, they're probably going to remember the illustration more than sometimes the meat. So if you can work in, not saying don't use the meat too, but instead of just jumping right in, you say, hey, let me tell you about a story. You know, Jesus was on one side of the lake and he was preaching to thousands of people. And people were coming, so many people came that he got in a boat and he preached to them from the shore. Some point later in the day, he got in the boat with his closest followers, his disciples. They said, let's go to the other side. If you just tell that story, like in 2 minutes, that will be a super impactful way. And so this will help you create stories. It'll also, you can take a Bible story that you tell, drop it in, and it'll evaluate it for biblically accurateness to see if you've actually embellished the story. So just some really cool tools on here. Yeah, there's some other, this is a book summary. If you, like me, like people to have really good SMART goals, I built that little bot for people to write better SMART goals. So, thoughts, questions?
Don, how would you describe the difference between a bot and a cat?
So, a bot, and I've been using bot a lot today. I try to call them tools, kind of make it a little more generic so that it's not, people don't freak out. These are really tools that are helping you do a certain task. A chatbot typically is something that is AI. It's not really an app at all because there's no software running. You're just fine tuning a large language model. So I don't remember if I showed you this, but like if you wanted to input like a chatbot on your website, this is what it would look like. I can't find my session. All right. So how did I build most of those chatbots or those tools? I use something called Chip. And so there's a little flyer on your table, and I'm going to say it once again. I don't work for Chip. I just really, really like their partnership that they have with us. And they make building these tools, almost every one of those tools that you saw, I built using Chip. And I put in a knowledge source and did that. They have made this available. Like they're allowing me to share all these tools that I created with you all. And it's not free for them. Like every time you use these tools, there's a cost that somebody is paying for using these AI tools. But they're letting me provide these to you. They also would love, and again, this is between you and them, like they would love to come alongside you in your church if you had questions about how you could use some of these tools. Like if you wanted to put the little chatbot on your website and you don't want to do it at all and you just want somebody to help you do that, they could help you do stuff like that. Maybe you're a church and you've got like a whole bunch of people using AI and you say, I really would wish our people would use this in this certain environment and we want to build out some solutions. They can work with you and then basically onboard everybody on your staff with access to using these chatbots and or to build your own chatbots for your church. One of the bots that we built, if you go back to that one that was about helping the pastor, I think that one's on there. If not, I'll add it. There's one like, hey, I'm writing a job description for a new youth pastor. And it'll give you a sample job description and you just go in there and modify it and make it better yourself. You can do that in ChatGPT. You can just go to ChatGPT and do that, but it's going to give you one that's not so fine-tuned for our specific circumstance. If you know how to build out those system prompts, you can do that yourself. You don't need to use any of this. But what I've tried to do is think about issues that people face, and I've tried to come up with solutions to do that. You could build your own engaged postmoderns. It'd just be a little bit of work to get started doing stuff like that. Questions, comments, thoughts? All right. So,
Don, for someone who's ignorant, I'm always say that. Late to the game, never used this stuff before. I'm hearing all of this stuff, give me 50 events for my kids. Now I'm sitting here, we've been talking, hey, I would love an infographic for this event we have coming up. Where do you start? Where do you go?
Yeah. So if you're starting from scratch, I would love to say, I'd love to help every single one of you because we sat down and somebody asked me over lunch, hey, I'm a youth pastor and I'd like to be able to build something that works with Google. And my mind is like, oh, that sounds cool. I'd love to build that. I can't build everything I'm thinking about building. So the folks at Chip would be who I'd point you to because I just trust them. And like, instead of thinking, well, I don't know if I could afford X, whatever they charge to do stuff, think about, so I believe that the first thing you ought to be asking for anything we're doing is how could I use AI to bring it as part of my team to help me do certain things. I sat down with someone not long ago who is an HR person who has to get job descriptions that people write and get them into a right format that one, will not get them sued, and then two, actually are good, well-written job descriptions. And she spends most of her day getting poorly written job descriptions that are just not good. And so she spends most of her day rewriting that and sending it back and going back and forth to that person. And so I showed her where she could build this chatbot that asks the user questions. So you want to hire somebody, you're an HR person at a company and you want to hire a marketing person. It would not ask you to upload a job description. It would ask you questions. What are you wanting to accomplish? What would this person do? What would their week look like? And it just asks you a bunch of questions and it creates the job description from that. And it does it in such a way that is built to not get you in trouble because you said the wrong thing or you didn't say the right thing. and it is well written. So people would look at that and say, that's my job. I understand it. At first, her response was, that's what I do. That's my job. And I said, no, this isn't a threat to you. This actually should make your life more fulfilling because you're not sitting there and correcting the junk that you're receiving all the time. And she at first was kind of like, oh, I'm worried you're taking my job. And then she came back and said, actually, this is so much better. Like the job descriptions that it's creating are so much better. Or you can take a poorly written job, dump it in there, and it'll rewrite it as a well-written job. So that's the kind of stuff that the folks at CHIP can help you with. My superpower is not being a physicist, not knowing the physics, and is not being the Python script writer who writes the code that does this. I think if I were to describe what I'm able to do is I have the ability to talk to the person who writes code and then the subject matter expert who has a problem, and I can be the bridge between those two people who typically don't talk to each other and don't understand each other's worlds. So I know enough about this side that I know what's possible, and I know a whole lot about this side to see what the problems are. And the first thing you need to decide is what's the problem we're trying to solve. And once you decide what the problem is, now you can start building those solutions. So I would say you know your problem better than I'll ever know it. Pastors, I can speak into a good bit of what the pastor problem is, but I can't answer it like somebody that's pastoring right now full time. So having someone come alongside you and help you decide what it is you're trying to tackle, to the guy who's like, hey, I'd like to have an AI that would be in my Google and would help me track when I had my last touch to each person that I'm working with and discipling. Wow, that's an awesome use case. But asking those questions. So maybe we need to create a bot that would help ask those questions. I don't know. I really like the folks at CHIP. I would say reach out to them if you're interested. They have a lot of free tools that you can just use. But I'm going to just warn you, if you start using their free stuff, you're going to run out of stuff and you're going to go, wow, I really want to upgrade for a little bit of stuff. So it's not free to use all their stuff, but they're kind of a cool partner. So those are the kind of things that they've been able to do. And again, I just think that they'll let us build out all the stuff that we've done. They allow us to create FaithBot and use it thousands of times, and we're not paying for using that. Any other questions? Yeah.
I saw Gemini up there on one of your slides, and I was just curious your thoughts about DeepSeek, and if you have concern about DeepSeek, it's being infiltrated into all kinds of platforms like Gemini. So
Yeah.
how do we deal with that?
Yeah. So DeepSeek, if anybody heard of DeepSeek? All right. So DeepSeek was an open source model that China released maybe a couple months ago. Within minutes, my phone starts blowing up from our security people, and our risk management team was like, "Whoa!" And we had 9 people download it within the first hour or two and put it on their phones. And so here's the thing: when you use a tool like OpenAI or ChatGPT or Gemini or DeepSeek or Grok or whatever it is, you are providing data back to that other person. DeepSeek is not as big of a deal as it was made out to be. It became a big deal because it's China, and that became the scary, where there's been other models that come out of China and nobody ever said anything about. The difference is if you take DeepSeek and you use the Chinese version that's hosted in China on the Chinese models, and you install that software on your computer, your phone or your computer, you've given it access to certain stuff, not like people worry about. Like if you're in an Apple environment, they pretty much lock down. You can't hop from one app to the other app and get information. But it is certainly filtered, and like I've trained FaithBot to be very faith-based. They've trained their DeepSeek model to be very, you're not going to say anything poorly about China in that model. That said, the open source version you can download and then run from anywhere. And now you've lost you don't have any of that concern. It's a phenomenal model. Like what they were able to accomplish with DeepSeek is really good. And then it starts showing up, like Microsoft has a distilled version. But those versions you're seeing outside of China are perfectly safe. They're not connected at all. They don't phone home. That's the thing you're worried about, like it phoning home and sending data. It's not doing that. It can't. The way that, and when we host our open source models, they are totally firewalled off from anything else, and we can see if it ever tried to call home, and those are not. And actually, it's also built with a standard interface that almost every large language model is using anyway. We could get a little geeky on that one. We won't. Other questions about these tools? All right.
So what resources are?
Sorry.
What resources are there? Like if we were trying to, like for worship ministry, trying to create ProPresenter files, or trying to create automation between Google Docs and Planning Center and ProPresenter and some of that kind of, automating that workflow to get rid of some of the busy work.
So you just use terms that I don't know. So I know ProPresenter, but everything after that, like there are some tools that I don't know anything about. But here's the cool thing. If I were looking that up, I would go to my favorite large language model. So it could be Gemini, ChatGPT, Llama 3, 4. And I would just say, I'm trying to automate the workflow between this, and here's our system. I'll describe out our system. This is how we're currently doing it. Do you have any suggestions for how to automate that? And it would come back and say, yeah, here's some ways you could streamline your process. Because I don't know enough about it. But the crazy thing is you don't have to. The way that they use this for ideation, that would be how I would get started. And it may say, hey, there's actually some software that's already been written that does that, and here it is. Anything else?
Another question over here?
Yes.
So do you think that AI has been listening in on our conference today?
Well, if any of you use something like Otter or one of those meeting summary tools, then yeah, it has. If you've turned that on, I have not turned it on, and I would not think that any of you have. I will tell you, like a funny story is I was doing a presentation to the trustees on AI and all the security stuff that we've done and all the work that we're doing to do it safely and securely. And it was just this huge thing. And I was worried, like, oh, somebody's going to be really upset when we're doing this. Nobody, everybody was all excited. Thank you so much for being so careful, and on and on and on. Meeting ended. I get an email from Otter. Here's the summary of your meeting. I was like, oh my goodness. And then I get a phone call from like people that I don't like. When they call me, it's like, oh, what's going on? Well, one of the trustees didn't know that he had installed Otter on his phone because he had gone to another meeting that had Otter, and he clicked a button. I like this. He added it, put it on his phone, and turned it on. And then anything that showed up in his calendar, it just automatically added to any meeting that he was going to and provided. And by chance, the next meeting he was at was our meeting. It logged in. The person who was managing the meeting saw him requesting, added him, and it did it. So I'm not a big fan of those tools because people don't know how to use them and they start giving it access to stuff. Unfortunately, it was just me talking about, ironically, AI security. But I can't do something if somebody else does something. I'm glad it wasn't me is all I can say.
Next thing you know, you're on the Signal chat talking about Yemen.
I'm not on the Signal chat talking about Yemen. I'm on Signal to talk about other stuff, but yeah. Any other questions? What I would like to do is I want to have an official Q&A session in a few minutes. We had kind of gotten into that. What I want you to do is go to that donbarger.com website, pick some of those tools, and start playing with them while you're here. I want you to play with it. I want to be just honest with you. If I tell you to go home and play with it, most of you will never open it. If I can get you to open it right here and spend 5 minutes playing with it, I think I have half of you hooked. And I think you're going to really enjoy what you've got. And then I want you to do that for 5 minutes, pick one of those, play with it, and I want you to talk at your table about which one you chose and your observations. So I'm going to start a timer, And for the next 5 minutes, I want you to pick one of those tools and use it. If I can get everybody's attention, this is what I'd like to hear. I would like you to explain what somebody else at your table did with AI. Not what you did, but I want to hear what somebody else at your table did. Yes. Critiqued their pastor. I did not build that bot, but I could. All right, yeah.
One of my really smart coworkers used the academic research to find articles about a topic that we had to write about recently.
Cool. So use the academic research bot tool to research a topic that they're going to be writing about. Now, caveat, AI is notorious for hallucinating and making stuff up. So if you ask it a topic, so I had a missionary lives in a remote village somewhere and said that he wanted to help researching that village, or researching for his PhD. And so I built this bot for him, and he wrote back and said, man, I used it. It found like hundreds of articles I didn't know exist. Guess what? They did not exist. And the crazy thing is, I'm like, Clay, you ask it to create discipleship material, or are you wanting academic research on people who have written discipleship materials in a very remote village of like 12,000 people? Nobody's written that. That's why you're doing your PhD. So if you ask it for stuff that it doesn't have any information on, sometimes it will find stuff that's not there. I've tried to make it work, won't do that by making it double check and cite its sources, but you should just click the source, and if it doesn't open, then it probably didn't exist to begin with. All right, where did somebody else at your table, how did they use it?
She created a podcast from a devotional that she'd used in the ESL class.
Awesome. Did you use Notebook LM? So what'd you think?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, for something that's totally free, now you are the product because it's free, it is amazing. I've not found any AI tool that builds those podcasts. And it's always the same two people, that same guy and lady. But yeah, it's pretty powerful. Anybody else? How did you use it? Yeah.
Our youth theme for Youth Day is standing on God's business, coming from Ephesians 6 and 11. So they always do a T-shirt with the emblem on it, saying what they're talking about what their theme is. So she created a T-shirt that had standing on God's business with the soldier in the armor with the scripture and everything on it.
Awesome.
Really cool.
I love it. And here's the cool thing. You could take that same emblem once you've created it, and now you can say, now create a notebook cover using the same theme. Now create this, now create that. And you can get a whole theme of things from that using that same. Oh. What tool did you use? Okay. So you could do the same thing in ours, and I removed the limit. So there's a image generation tool in there that you can do. Yeah, I've removed the limit. Somebody's paying for it, just not you. So, all right.
When you say ours, you're talking about Donnie?
The Don Barger at whatever it's called, donbarger.com. So on there are several tools in there. One of those is an image creator. It wasn't working a few minutes ago, but I got to figure out what I broke it last night. Anything else? How else did somebody use AI?
We added FaithBot to our website.
Oh, you did?
Well, we're going to.
Oh, okay. I was like, you shouldn't be able to do that without me giving you the access, which I can. I totally can let you do that. Oh, no, I'm thinking, yes, you can do that. You can put the link, but what you can also do is this.
Mitch just explained to me how to do that.
So you can do this. No, you totally can use that. I'm giving you permission to use anything I have. But like you can actually make it where it's not just a link that people click on, it just pops up on your site. And so I'd be shocked if you figured out how to do that without me giving you the code. But you may have. So we can You can totally use this, and we can even, the folks at CHIP, you can use my version for free and not worry about it. If you want to like really make this better and put like your church and, you know, ask Pastor Jim and put a picture of Jim Cooley right here, we can do that, and they will charge you a little bit of money to set that up for you, though they can't do it for free. But you can use the stuff I built for free. It would look just like this if you use my version. But if you wanted it to like be specifically to your church, or to have information about your church services, when the church meets, what's the pastor's series going to be like over the next year, all that kind of stuff, then that would be, you'd need to add that knowledge base. And I can't do that for everybody. I can, but I think the IMB would get upset with me if I spent all my time doing that.
Where would I get a picture of Jim Cooley?
So I've got a bunch of pictures of Jim. Some of them he's wearing blue jeans even.
I want to see those. I've never seen them.
You come up to the church on Friday. If you ever come to the church on Friday, then he'll be up there, and he usually is pretty casual on Fridays. So how else did you use them? Come on, I know somebody used them.
My group used it to find a more interesting table to collaborate with.
Yikes. Well, I can't help that. All right. Anybody else have another crazy idea that you used yours for?
Don, I'll share. I used your missionary research tool. We're going to Chelsea, Vermont in July, and we're going to do a soccer camp. And say, hey, this is what we're doing. Then, okay, is it evangelism? So the questions, is it evangelism? Yes. What are the values there? And then here are some questions for discussion starters. Here are some activities to do your theme. And so just to help generate ideas from a missions perspective and going on a short-term trip.
That's awesome. That would be great. And I would I think that would be a wonderful use of that to help you and come up with ideas. And, you know, I did one on Prattville, Alabama this morning early, and I asked it, what are the vices? I said, what things keep people up at night in Prattville, Alabama? And it was actually pretty good, I think. So, what's that?
Shooting out the lights.
No, I mean, it talked about the vices, that are prevalent in the community, and here are things people struggle with. And here's I thought it was pretty informative. I'm not a Prattville expert, but I think it probably was spot on for a small bedroom community back and forth from Montgomery. Yeah.
You talked about your bot, Faithlight's a static bot. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then your OpenAI and Llama and ChatGPT, they're not static.
So depends on, like our Llama instance is static as well.
Okay, but if you just go to somebody like the ChatGPT, is there things we need to be cautious about how we use those because of
I just would never put personal identifiable information in any. I mean, I hate to be because I'm highly technical. I'm a highly techie person and love technology. But if it's super sensitive, don't put it on a.
So generic kind of questions.
You need to put it on a concrete tablet, not an electronic tablet. It's like you just need to chisel it. That'd be about the only way you can really be safe. Like if it is life or death, you've got to air gap your data, and don't share that. Don't put. Yeah, we're going here, and my passport number is this, and my social security number is this, my bank account's there, and here's my Bitcoin wallet ID. Now, I wouldn't put anything like that in, and I also would protect not just my data, but if I were a youth pastor, I wouldn't put, here's 12 people going on a mission trip, and here's their names, and I need to get rooming lists. Can you make the rooming list for me? I wouldn't do that on a public, non-private AI tool. So we're going to do a more Q&A. I wanted to show you one last thing. I was at William Carey University doing one of these a couple weeks ago, and I was staying with Brett Golson, their VP, and I was just kind of telling him, hey, you should create a bot that would help people considering going to William Carey or Samford or UAB or wherever, then I went and I created this bot, and it will tell you about William Carey. Would you like to schedule a visit? Yes. And it'll give you the information on how to schedule the visit, academics, on and on. You can ask, what time does the post office close on campus? Hopefully it'll do that. Tells you when does the summer term start? What degrees do you offer? So this is for university, but think about the WMU. Like, would it be beneficial to have something like this on the WMU website or the First Baptist Church website or your website or your high school or your college or whatever it is? Would it be beneficial to have something that people could go find out information about your organization and they could go interact with the chatbot? And I would make it where it's like a little button that pops up down in the corner. So these are the kind of things that are really, I would say they're not, I don't want you to think you can go home this afternoon and you're going to be able to build this by yourself. I would probably get somebody to help you build it and not try to do it yourself. But it's not that hard. I built this in a weekend. Spent some time with Brett and built it, and I think there's a lot of really good use cases for building these type of solutions. And maybe in the future we could do a 1 hour online session or something. Hey, you want to try to learn how to do this, and we'll come online and for an hour we can talk about it, and you can get your techie people from your church on it. If you want to build something like this is what you may think, well, how did you do that? This is the back end of CHIP. That chatbot is what you saw. This is the back end. So I built this, described it, and then here are the 4 predetermined conversation starters I came up with. This particular one uses ChatGPT 4.1. It's a public site, but it's using an API. I really don't care. It already has all this information anyway. It comes from their website. There's no secret data. ChatGPT's already got it. But if you wanted to change the models, these are the models that are offered by CHIP. If you're doing research, these are really good research models. They'll do deep research on different topics and really come back with good stuff. But for most purposes, these first 3 do really well. Gemini's really probably top of the line right now, in my opinion. And then this is how I got it to do that. I wrote this prompt. And it's just enthusiastic, knowledgeable admission and recruitment guide for William Carey University, a Christian university in Hattiesburg. Your role is to provide helpful, friendly, and accurate answers. You should sound warm, professional, and inviting. Your tone should be conversational, encouraging, and tailored to a high school or transfer student. Never make up information. Stick to the university's official messaging and resources. These are all important, and they're in there for a reason. Because before I did that, it would just make up stuff if it didn't know the answer. And then there are some examples of questions that I gave it. And then there were some specific things I wanted to send people to, and I just built that right into the prompt. But here's there's the sauce that makes this work, is that these are all knowledge sources that answer random questions from them. And so I built, every one of these has been added as knowledge that the bot has. And you may say, well, how do you do that? This is the secret of CHIP. You click on add source and you have a document, and you click there and you just add the document and it adds it to it. That is, if you know anything about building AI solutions, that's transformational, because in the past, this was all done with Python and vector databases and stuff that are really confusing. They've made it very easy. You can have it go here and say www. and say crawl the entire website, hit fetch, and it just goes out and it grabs all the content from that website and it puts it as a knowledge base. And then you can have that update daily. You can say, go look and see if every day they've added anything, and it adds to its knowledge base on a daily basis. So that's the back end of CHIP, and it's fairly simple to use. You can get metrics on this. You can see, so FaithBot, the thing that I told you about, let's see how many people have used it. We're up to 11,450 people. So that's a good bit of use. And then I can actually, on FaithBot, I can go check and see what people are asking about, so I can make sure to get the right type of content in our ads that we're running. So, and then you can actually, you can go look at their chats. So my biggest suggestion to you is, if these are things that you're interested in, like putting a chatbot on your website and making it more custom to what you are, or maybe you're a pastor, then you say, hey, I would like to take every sermon I've ever done, and I would like to create a chat or a tool where I can go back and say, when's the last time I preached on Ephesians? And it would say, here are all your sermons from Ephesians and when they were. Or you can create it and chat with your sermons, like ask your sermons questions. So if you want something like that, it's not that difficult to do. I don't have the time to walk you through doing that. That would be something I would push you over to the folks at CHIP, and you just work with them. To tell you though, that my son is in pharmacy school, and he saw some of the stuff I was doing, and we spent several days together, and he got really curious. He is kind of a curious guy. Jim knows Jackson, and Jackson started playing around with it. And next thing I know, he's like, hey, can I get access? And I gave him access, and he starts building some stuff, and I start coaching him how to do it. Well, the next thing I know, the CEO from CHIP is talking to Jackson and saying, wow, you're creating some stuff that, we don't have this medical stuff, and you speak Spanish and you do this. And so Jackson's now doing some stuff with them. I share that to say it's not that hard, but you do have to have a little bit of understanding. If you're going to build this type of stuff from scratch, you do need a little bit of understanding. But the folks at CHIP can really help you out. I don't find that they're terribly expensive, but it's not free. If you are going to use ChatGPT and you insist on using ChatGPT, please pay the $20 a month for the pro version. And then go into the settings and say, don't train on my data. I still don't trust them. I still think they're probably training on your data, but at least go through the hoops of trying to make them not train on it. That's why, to me, CHIP is just so economical, because for the same $20, you can get all this stuff here and have all the same models. You have like 7 or 8 models to choose from, one of which is ChatGPT. So that's my only plug for FaithBot for CHIP is I really like those guys, and their motto is to kind of make AI accessible for everybody, and I think they've tried to do that. So that's all I have for this. I would like to open it up though for a session of Q&A, and if you've got some questions, be happy to try to answer them.
The FaithBot you just described uses different models, but somehow you're saying FaithBot will allow for your stuff not to be trained, though it might be using chat.
So I'm totally training everything that people put into FaithBot, because I'm trying to use it to make the bot better. And when I'm worried about Claude or Gemini or OpenAPI, what I'm concerned about them is training on stuff that really I don't want them to. But if somebody's asking what's the difference between a Muslim and a Catholic, I really don't care that they're training on that. If I don't want them to train on it, we use our internal models. So these are the ones that are hosted internally, which is a whole different, there's a chip for that. And we have chip on our internal servers, but we don't use that with public stuff. All these bots here are all public. And so to me, I would love it if we started training ChatGPT with tons of Christian stuff. So I don't really worry about it on that. And the same thing, like if you're just talking about your church and when stuff is available at your church, most of that's already on your website, and most of that's, then every bit of that's probably already been ingested into ChatGPT already, or whichever model you're talking about. So this is, make it smaller. Yeah, so it's, other questions?
How would you like for us to contact you to put the fake bot on the church website?
Yeah,
Just as it is.
just as it is, then
Do you have a bot for that?
I do not have a bot for that. I probably should. So that's my email address, just dbarger@imb.org. And I'll just need to know the type of website you have. Like if it's a WordPress site or something else, then I can get someone on our team to send you it's just one little snippet of code that whoever manages your website can put it on there. Yeah. All right, I know you got questions, like something. Yeah.
What's all the talk about the environmental concerns about AI?
Yeah, so like I'm also a huge nuclear power geek. I love nuclear power. I don't know why, like I just am fascinated by it. We haven't built a new nuclear power plant almost since my life. I think the last one came online in 1976, I think. AI could tell me. I knew that power was a big deal whenever I saw that one of the AI companies has bought a closed down nuclear power plant and they're turning it on to power the nuclear, to power their AI large language models. X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, Grok has built this data center in Memphis, Tennessee that's enormous. It is just, it goes on and on and on of just computers. And the amount of water that they're using to cool those, I think was like 20% of the water in Memphis, if I remember right. It was some unbelievable amount of water that they're having to pull in from their water system to be able to cool the AI model. So AI is highly energy, it consumes a lot of electricity and it consumes a lot of water to cool those things. So there are environmental concerns in times of, just think about Tesla, what they're having to use in AI processing power to process all of the live feeds from every car that's driving around in the self-driving. I can't imagine the amount of computing power that's requiring. I think that's the main concern. It's the same thing with like Bitcoin and blockchain. Those things, in order to do that, most of those Bitcoin minings a lot of them were built in like the Arctic area so that it's really cool and they don't have to pay money to cool the processors and stuff. Yeah. Good question.
When will we have access to the video?
As soon as I can get it ready, so hopefully.
Christmas 2029.
I'll use an AI tool to help me with it.
And how will we find it?
alabama.org/AI.
Alabama State Board of Missions.org. But yeah, that's what the Alabama spells out. That's the only way I can remember it. I say Alabama State Board of Missions. Okay. Yeah. And tomorrow the book will be free. So maybe I don't know if we can blast it out again to the people who are here. If you want to download, I apologize that Amazon didn't make it free today, but it'll be free. The electronic version starting tomorrow. And it really does, if you scan one of the QR codes at the end of every chapter, like I do pop up on your screen and explain that chapter to you. And it's all an AI.
Don, I guess one more question.
Yeah.
I understand that you all have a team doing digital engagement. Do you see, associations partnering together, with
the right team to make sure that our churches in St. Montgomery are doing digital engagement as well?
So I would absolutely, like, I know I'm not here to talk about digital engagement today. I would love it. I'd love to talk about it. I think that one of the things I've challenged our digital, we have a global team that leads us in digital engagement, and then each part of the world, each region of the world, Affinity, has their own digital engagement strategist. But the global team that I supervise, I've asked them that over the next 6 months to a year to build out some training that churches themselves or associations or state conventions could implement. You don't have the challenges that we have. For a church to buy ads, for First Baptist Birmingham to buy ads in Homewood for young moms who maybe that is totally what you would expect. You're not going to get your site shut down. You're not violating any terms of service. That's totally acceptable. For me to run ads in certain countries, most other countries, targeting an unreached people group, that is very problematic, and it has to be done with a lot of ease and lots of stuff I shouldn't talk about right here, but just to say it's a lot easier for you to do this in the States. So a lot of the stuff that we have to spend a lot of money trying to do, you wouldn't have to do. And so it's not that difficult. And the biggest problem, and I would put the beg out to you, is we need digital responders. The biggest problem you're going to have is if your digital engagement campaign is successful, who is going to respond to these people? We did the Olympics. We had 27,000 conversations and just over the time the Olympics were going on. And we had 700 Southern Baptists who helped do that. And then about the same number of overseas. So your biggest thing, and we train people how to become a digital evangelist, digital responder. That's the biggest challenge you're going to have. So if you have people who speak other languages other than English and they want to be involved in missions from where they are right now in the U.S., never get on a plane, I can put them to work, not work for pay, but volunteer to be a digital responder. Other questions, comments?
Don, following up on that, we would love to do some follow-ups. You mentioned digital engagement. Just with this group here, what are some logical follow-up suggestions you might have just to gauge interest in a follow-up conference where you and other folks in?
Yeah, I think maybe the best way to do that would be to try to find a time where you're already together, maybe the state convention or something, and then tack on a one-day either before or after, or do some breakouts where we would do a very intentional deep dive into how to develop a digital engagement strategy. I think it is the easiest way. I liken it to this. If we were to leave this building today and we go over to the mall, whichever way the mall is, and I say, hey, there's 125 of us. We're going to go share our faith right now. We're each going to go find people and we're going to share our faith with them. So you see that person over there in the red? Yeah, he's written me 12 times in the last month, and he called me last night saying, I really want somebody to tell me about Jesus. Now, we're not going to go talk to him. We're just going to go randomly find somebody over here and talk to. No, you're going to go to that person. And that's what digital engagement does. Digital engagement allows you to take 55,000 people living in Prattville, Alabama. I just made that number up, but let's say they're 55,000. And I can narrow that down to say, of the 55,000, here's 183 people who are interested in having spiritual conversations. Where are you going to start? I'm going to start with 183. So it actually becomes a much more natural conversation using digital engagement to target that. So we would love to help do that. We'd love to help that. And I would say that I'm unapologetically biased, but I'd say that our digital engagement team is top notch. They are absolutely phenomenal. Other questions, comments? Anybody in here in education? Anybody teach?
Publicly.
Wherever. Do you teach anything? Yeah, you teach. All right, you teach. So I taught a class last fall at William Carey on AI, innovation, and missions. teaching a summer class on theology of missions for their master's program. I don't have time to record every lecture, build out the solution, build out the coursework. These are all online classes. Education in the world of AI is a big challenge. People are worried because people cheat. I can't get real info, and I would push back and say maybe the way we teach needs to change for a new learning style, and how people internalize information is very different than it was when I was little. And so when I created the course last summer, they asked me to do it pretty late, and I created my entire lecture. This is an example of one of the classes I taught, one of the sessions.
So this is the session that I have been looking forward to.
So as you would imagine, this, not me, none of my lectures that I did for this class.
AI represent pivotal moments in human history where technology fundamentally altered.
So none of the lectures were me. They were all kind of interactive where things were on the screen. They changed every 8 to 15 seconds. The content on the screen would change so that it was engaging. This is a longer one, and it was 22 minutes long. Most of my lectures were between 15 and 20 minutes long. I did multiple lectures every week that were short, much more consumable, and I used this AI tool where I took my image, I took my voice, and I just texted, I wrote it all out. I did create all the content. AI did not create my content. I created the content, but then I used the AI to communicate with them. It was about the third week whenever one of the students had a one-on-one with me online, and they went, wait a minute, are you using AI for our lectures? It took them 3 weeks to understand that I was doing that. This summer in my class, I'm introducing something new. So if you've ever taught online, one of the favorite things that I hate is watch this lecture, read this chapter, write 250 words on reflection, then find somebody else and write 100 words reflecting on their reflection. It is busy work. It does not mean that you're learning anything. And you can not watch the lecture and write 250 words. I hate it. So they're going to hate me this summer. I created a bot for every lecture. And then the bot will ask you questions about what you're learning. And you have to explain yourself. You have to explain what you're learning. And then the bot will know whether or not you're actually learning or not. You're not going to be able to fool the bot. And you have to interact. And it won't stop until it has been convinced that you have internalized, that's what I call it, internalized the information. There's been knowledge transfer, and you're able to tell it back to people. So last fall, I had not a lot of students. So I actually had their midterm was a 1 hour one-on-one with me where they had to tell me what they were learning, and I would ask them questions. It was like an oral exam for a PhD. You had to demonstrate to me that you knew what it was. And the final was the same. And if you watch the videos and if you've listened to everything, you should not have any problem. But if you're one guy who called me from the golf course, tried to do his call in from the golf course, it was obvious that he had not done anything. And so that's a lot of work for me. That's a lot of work for the professor, for a teacher. So building out these type of bots will help them. It's not going to replace me talking to them, but I may do it once instead of twice. And it's more frequent. Like every single session, they get interaction, and I see a transcript of every one of those. So that's going to be my summer trial for the class I'm teaching this summer, trying to rethink how we do education, how we do training and knowledge transfer. Thinking about you training you probably all have phenomenal small group Sunday school teachers. They probably are all phenomenal. I'm saying that tongue in cheek because I know they're not. Imagine if you could build out a help for your people who are teaching so that they could be prepared. And you could have the bot ask crazy questions about this lesson so they could be prepared. You've all got that one guy in the class who was always asking those questions. You're like, what are you doing? You could be prepared to do that. So like you could bring that type of knowledge base for the series that you're building. So yeah, put people in touch with Lifeway. I'll license it to them. And yeah. Thoughts, comments, last questions? Yeah.
Just curious, obviously you didn't get pushed back, but when you created the course with your, you know, that guy, it's not you, but is you, teaching the course, did you get any pushback from administration or anybody, you know, or did you even have to get permission?
So the class was AI,
Right.
innovation,
Right.
and the missionary task.
Right.
I think I could get away with that.
Yeah, I was just curious, I didn't think you would.
But I did tell them when they asked me to teach the class, I'm like, hey, I got very little time to prepare this. I don't have time to go to a studio and shoot videos for 16 hours or 30 hours, whatever it would be, for these classes. So I'm going to do this. They were like, that sounds awesome. So that's what I did. Yeah. It is my content, though. I was very careful to say this. And how I created the content was I just got my phone and I just talked about that topic. So I didn't text in because then it sounds wooden. So this actually sounds like me saying it because I did say it. But I just had the AI put it all together for me. Yeah. Synthesia. Synthesia. Just don't get sticker shock when you see the cost on that. Anything else? Questions, comments, concerns, ethical issues?
How do we know if we go to the movies if anybody in that film is really?
So Tyler Perry, anybody ever seen a Medea movie? Yeah, you know it. He was building an $800 million studio in Atlanta, Georgia. Last year, he saw what was coming out of one of the AI video tools. He canceled the video. He canceled the studio building. He was like, we're not going to be making movies the way we make movies 2 years from now. And, you know, the big Screen Actors Guild fight was, you're cloning me. So I could be dead. This is an ethical concern for me. I could be a professor full-time teaching somewhere. The university has my likeness, has my voice. I die, and a new course comes out. So, well, you know, he's really smart, but he really stinks at presenting. So we're not going to use him. We're going to let him design the content, and Donnie's going to deliver it. And I'm dead. So to me, there's like, I want to be very careful I want all of your images because I really want Dr. Cooley's image because I want to make him say some stuff, but I don't want you to have my image. So, yeah. Any other ethical questions, concerns, ideas? All right, final thing. I want you to take 2 minutes and at your table, if you're sitting where you're not with somebody else at your table because your table left and went somewhere else, join another table. I want you at your table to tell one takeaway that you are going to implement as a result of today to the table. You got 2 minutes. That's it. 2 minutes. So we're done. So I want to rapidly, just to let everybody hear what everybody else is doing, and I'm talking like in 20 seconds, what is the one takeaway you're going to do? And it's got to be only one person per table. So you all be deciding who's going to give that. We're going to start right here because he's already pointing at you.
Having a bot for our website.
All right, bot for your website. All right.
Took our live streams and make clips quickly that I can upload to social media with links to our sermons.
Totally. So taking your live streams, making clips with links to your sermons. I got a bot I'll add on there, a social media creator that can suggest posts for different social media things. I didn't add it. I'll add that there. I built that. All right, over here.
Taking either your Facebook or making one to go to my Sunday school teachers.
All right.
Let them, and I'm going to use it in a big format and let them do it like we're doing here.
Yeah.
Try to ask questions about their lessons each week so that they can.
Well, I'll come to First Baptist and help you do that. I mean, but Jim's going to have to take me to Speedy Gonzales as part of the payment plan.
He's already told me that's where you
All right, all right.
Let me know when you're gonna do that.
Yeah, all right. Anybody, we're going to meet up in Hueytown. Go to Speedy's. If you're looking for real Mexican food, that's not where you're going. You're looking for Speedy's. All right, really quickly, over here.
It's just he and I left at the table, so we're both going to put a faith bot on the side.
All right, over here.
We have a lot of
books that can be turned into audiobooks.
Totally. 11 Labs is your friend. All right, back here that are not looking. All right. All right, we got to get more creative than that. That's a good one, but all right, right here.
The sermon chatbot you were talking about, I think that's going to be that's something we're going to go back and look at.
Yeah, and the sermon chat bot isn't just for sermons. Like it could be for small groups. It could be for Bible studies. It could be college outreach. Yeah. All right, back here.
Just general streamlining a lot of graphics and video.
Yeah. Awesome. Right here, am I Huey telling folks?
Okay, introducing this to our now ministry, which is No Ordinary Worship, which is our youth and young adults that are 18 to 35. They do small clips, reaching out to other 18 to 35-year-olds. So the stuff we've learned today, we're gonna make sure we get that to them.
Awesome, awesome. All right, back here in the back. You guys.
The podcast on Notebook LM.
Dude, that's one of my favorite things I do. Yeah. All right, you don't have any choice. You're the only person. So what you got?
Well, I collaborated with them.
Okay.
They let me in the door. They came up with the idea of taking old sermons and making new podcasts.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. All right, back here.
Right here?
Yeah.
So I teach people how to play instruments, and I would love to understand the synthesia of using that to create videos in order to teach people how to play, and then to have some interaction with the student.
Cool. That's really good. So Synthesia is a phenomenal product. It is a little expensive. If you get there and you get sticker shock and you want to try out a cheaper one, there's one called HeyGen, HeyGen, and that one's a little cheaper. I don't think it's anywhere near as good, but it's a whole lot cheaper. So, all right, right over here.
It goes back to the chat bot again, but I'd love to see that posted in our ministry center with a comment on questions about your faith. Don't feel like are afraid to talk to a person. Chat bot.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. All right, way back there in the back.
The digital engagement campaign. That's
All right, we gotta do part 2 of this series and do a whole day of digital engagement somewhere. All right, yeah.
I was just going to mention, we saw the article that showed that therapy and counseling is what they're looking for. Think about how your church can reach those people in the community that are looking for therapy and counseling.
Yes.
And do it from a Christian perspective.
Yeah, New Hope and Trauma Healing Institute. Those are 2 Christian-based trauma counseling, oral story-based trauma counseling that I really am a big fan of. All right, this table.
Just quickly identifying and summarizing resources for Bible teaching prep or other things.
Okay. All right, you guys are all by yourselves. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I was thinking of sharing with my church about how to work with different viewpoints and different beliefs and share that resource with them, because some of them may have children or grandchildren that are diving into those. So teach them how to engage those estranged family members.
Mr. Physics?
I'm working with an Arabic language mission, so want to create a training video for some of our trauma therapy counselors.
That is cool. I didn't show you this, but since you said that, now, so this is going to tell me the story of Jesus Calm Storm, but now, tell me in Arabic. Oh, it doesn't know Klingon. Sorry, I tried. So Esperanto isn't really a real language. It was created, but it does say in Esperanto. So, yeah, I mean, so it can tell. I don't know if Elvish. Nope, doesn't know Elvish. Sorry. So there's all sorts of really cool things for translation in here. And so on my page, there's a tab called Articles. I really would love it if you would subscribe to this. This is on my Substack. So here's the post that went live 6 hours ago while I was standing up here. It's AI reshaping the job market. These are usually just really brief things that I'm thinking and reading. And this was on the counseling, if you're wanting to read more about that, the one on counseling. So here's why it gives me pause. AI is incredibly helpful. It's revolutionized how we work, learn, and create. It's not a therapist, friend, or pastor. Can't replace the image-bearing presence of another human or the Spirit of God. Use AI, appreciate it, maximize it. Don't ever let it become your replacement for real connection. God didn't send us a chatbot. He sent us Jesus. So this is really where I process out loud now and share with other people. So if you would want to be a part of that processing, I'd invite you to join that. But this is all on that donbarger.com. And I think that's it. Anybody else I didn't call on that had a crazy idea of how you're going to start using this? Under articles, right here. Yeah. I know I've kind of talked about Chip a good bit. I can't say enough good things about them. The fact that they're letting us use all the stuff that we've given you, and it's pretty amazing that they allow us to do it. And this is the cool thing: you can use this for free every month, for up to and don't pay a penny if you want, or if you want to use some of these, it starts $18 a month. There's lots of options. I think this is a really cool one for your teams at your whole churches. You can pull lots of people on there. But again, I'm not sharing it because I get a kickback at all. I'm just sharing it because I really want you to get started. And I'm afraid that if you don't find something simple, you get excited and you move on. So I really encourage you to reach out to those folks, and Polyglossia the same way. I'd love it I think they're in hundreds of churches now, but I would love for them to be very successful. It's really hard for Christians to break into ministry opportunities like that because churches don't want to pay, or ministries don't want to pay. And I just encourage you to support these types of orgs because they're trying to deliver stuff that is really cutting edge, and it's really hard to do that when we don't support them. So particularly the folks at Polyglossia, that's just a phenomenal ministry that they have. So I'm done. I really appreciate you all coming, and thank you so much for giving the day and allowing me to just share a little bit about what we're doing at the IMB and how we can help you all.